Chapter 710, Sacrifice. Chapter 710, Sacrifice. Proofreader, Papatonks. If I knew it was going to be like this, I'd have used that tiebreaker. Though I've just learned it and it's still dangerous. It was not only dangerous for himself, but for the enemy as well. Am I seeking stability too much? Seeing the flames right on top of him, Zhuofan was filled with regret. Why couldn't he have done like Yilin did, and risk his life to unleash all he had? Alas, it was already too late to do anything. Taking a deep breath, Zhuofan finally decided to face the golden flames head-on. He sent the vaulting Dragon King to coil around him and wrap him in thick azure flames. This was his last chance, to use the azure flames quality as a mediator between yin and yang to subdue the golden flames' brutality. But with how the azure flame and golden flame engender each other, it might combine with the golden flame. He had to first wear it down, or with how strong the golden flame was, it would simply scatter his aside. The crux was, after the azure flame was blown away, all that was left was his defenseless dragon's soul. This was his last defense. Afterward, his soul might perish. Outside of using the azure dragon, he had no other way. That was why he was finally giving his all in this fight. Frowning, Zhuofan glared at the dazzling flames. As they drew closer, his sweat kept pouring out. He offered one last prayer of hope. Let this be enough. Yilin looked on coldly as he gasped, "It's no use. I burned my own soul to unleash this decimating golden flame. A half-baked sacred beast inheritor like you stands no chance. Farewell, my fated adversary." Bam! The flames slammed into the azure dragon at last. The powerful force made the dragon shake and howl in pain. Zhuofan's mind was overcome with pain as well. It felt like his head was exploding from the thousands of blades sinking into it. But he held on still. He had the azure flame face the incoming attack, wanting to submerge the golden flames in an ocean of azure. He had no chance. The long stream of scorching flames was like a needle, piercing the azure flame sea. Even as they touched, the azure flame offered no resistance. He was lucky enough if his own power wasn't worn out instead. He had never imagined that Yilin's attack would be condensed to such a degree. It was so strong that his last-ditch effort was useless. The azure flame had no way of chipping away at the attack, not a damn use it had. Going at it with such a defense was practically suicide. If he had known, he would have done that. That was what he should have done from the start. Suddenly, Zhuofan's body shook from endless despair and regret. Unfortunately, it was too late to come out of this one. Who? As the golden flames came closer, a burning storm swept the entire body of the azure dragon and immediately removed its flames. Before the golden flames reached it, its heat was constantly burning the dragon's soul. Zhuofan's head was boiling as he spat out crimson blood. It's over. Once the flames entered the dragon's soul, he was a goner. He had been aware of Yilin's power, but it seemed that he still underestimated his opponent. Even if he wanted to use a real desperate move now, it was far too late. This fight was going to take his life away. Letting out a long breath, Zhuofan was overcome with regret. Chu Qingqing was distraught, her eyes tearing over. Xian Xiaoyu snickered all the while at his misfortune. The exalted double dragons were just about to put an end to this fight. However, a cry pierced everyone's ears. They all saw as purple lightning flickered and a familiar figure floated in front of the dragon's soul. Zhuofan squinted and he saw the tens of meters of a big purple bird, Chow'er. Did he not tell her to stay clear? Why? Chow'er faced the golden flames coming at the azure dragon without remorse. Wait, Chow'er, finally dawning on him, Zhuofan shouted. But Chow'er, streaked with purple lightning, had already met the golden flames. The purple lightning and the golden flames were brutal powers between heaven and earth, and as they clashed, it was almost like a resonance, issuing endless explosions. Maybe Chow'er had used every ounce of purple lightning she had as the golden flames were stopped. Even though the mighty flames were stopped, its power was still incredible. The golden flames swallowed Chow'er in its searing heat, even as her eyes were stubbornly holding on, using every drop of energy she had, even willing to use her life just to stop the flames. In the clashes between the purple lightning and golden flames, the flames were subsiding, seen with the naked eye. The purple lightning was like a chisel, chipping away at its power. The golden flame was like a viper, tearing at Shower at every chance it got, burning her plumes. She did not care, holding on with all she had to crush the golden flames. Zhuofan's heart was in pain. He knew now that Shower was sacrificing herself for his sake. Finally, the golden flames made a last bang as they dissipated. Shower was now burned all over, the purple flickering on her body long since exhausted. She just plopped on the ground powerlessly. Zhuofan shook all over as he took one hard step after another closer to her. Chu Qingqing held her mouth, her eyes glistening with tears. "Thank you, Shower. Such a protective spirit animal." Wen Tao sighed. Xie Tianshang was the most familiar with Zhuofan and sighed as well. Zhuofan raised this spiritual beast as his daughter. "I see. No wonder she's so loyal." Wen Tao gave Shower a long look of admiration. Xie Tianshang shook his head. "Senior brother, you didn't understand me. I mean to say that now that Zhuofan's daughter, Shower, lays dead, he will be truly enraged. The last time that happened, he ate his enemy alive. Just thinking about it gives me the chills. But, can he even do it?" Yi Lin's power, Wen Tao frowned. Xie Tianshang smiled with a shake of his head. In the esoteric debate, he wasn't that guy's match either. Trust me when I say this, those that he wants dead have no chance of living. Wen Tao's heart shook in shock and looked at Zhuofan with a grave face. "Foolish girl, didn't I tell you to run? Now that you're so big, you won't listen to your dad?" Slowly walking to Shower, Zhuofan bent down, caressing the sizzling body, burned by the golden flames. He felt one last trace of energy in her and rushed to take out a pill to give her, smiling calmly. Yet that calm hid a dreadful bloodlust. After they heard his words, they all shivered to their bones. Yi Lin panted from that heavy exertion and shouted, "Zhuofan, your spirit animal had saved you from death. But it's only a matter of time now. It shows that I will win by staking it all. While you, who don't have such power, will lose." Yi Lin was once again making signs, gathering the same power he used before to unleash it again. "Wait, junior brother, he doesn't have the spirit animal's help now. You don't have to go that far." Wu Qingqiu cried out. Yi Lin didn't even hear him as he kept going, even as his breath grew heavier and face paler. There wasn't much time and Zhuofan was beyond cunning. He wanted to win and that meant he had to use all he had to destroy his opponent and leave no room for error. This was his beast path. Victory above all else. Tightening his fists, Zhuofan stood up and gnashed his teeth with bloodshot eyes. "You want to stake it all? Ha ha ha, you asked for it." Right at the most crucial moment, he renounces his variance and goes for the basic dragon soul. Zhuofan closed his eyes as he finished the last sign with a vague smile. An azure flame flickered on the dragon's forehead. SSS. Purple lightning streaked its body like thousands of snakes. They reached the dragon head, where they vanished with a rumble. Dark mist, black as night, shifted all over the dragon, converging at the head once more and disappearing. Yi Lin was puzzled. Then an explosion happened and the dragon head released the aura of 3 different powers. The azure flame burned on the forehead, with a purple streak flashing inside it. Then the black mist enveloped them all as a 4th power, Qilint's red glow, covered them like a furnace to get them to combine. As they did, a terrible aura was unleashed. That's, the others could barely feel it, but Yi Lin, being the closest, felt its raw power rise. Grinning, Zhuofan said, "You guessed it, this is my way of combining the 4 dragon souls. I didn't do it before because even I'm scared of this power, scared I can't control it and kill myself with it. But now I thought that since I'm fighting with my life, I have to show something for it. If I die by failing to do it, then that's my luck. But if I succeed in combining them, then you're dead. Startled, Yi Lin looked overwhelmed as he stared intently at the dragon's forehead. Yet somehow, even as the powers mingled, they did not combine. It was also then that Yi Lin's spray of molten flames reached Zhuofan. Ha ha ha, your time's up. Maybe it can never combine at all. These powers all come from a sacred beast's raw trait. They are inherently repulsed by anything else. Maybe for Zhuofan or for himself, Yi Lin cackled as he saw his attack about to reach Zhuofan. Zhuofan simply stated, Yi Lin, you just don't get my cultivation method. I walk the common path of all the others. Moreover, the 5 great sacred beasts all come from the primal chaos, each wielding one aspect of it. Hasn't it ever occurred to you that they were once a whole? Ha ha ha, it might be just a wild guess, or the actual truth. Regardless, today, one of us will die. If I die from my own combined power instead of yours ain't a bad way to go either. Zhuofan's eyes flashed and he raised an eyebrow. By the way, since I figured the 5 powers could fuse, I find the 3 of them just lacking. So let's add another one. With a boom, on the dragon's forehead appeared a golden flame, the decimating golden flame. Wadash, Hao! Yi Lin cried out. Dismissing him with a wave, Zhuofan fibbed, easy now, it's just a smidgen my demonic dragon stole from you. Nothing to it. Then again, it is a great boost in my realization of combining these powers. After all, you need both gentle and brutal flames to get them to combine, ha ha ha. Zhuofan turned to the dragon head, eager for the result. Just like he thought, since the golden flame was introduced, it began to quickly combine with the azure flame. Then the purple lightning constantly zapped them as it joined the fusion. It was all going quite smoothly. With the Qilin power as the furnace, demon transformation art the base and the purple lightning as the medium, the 2 flames stabilized as they united. Hoo! The searing heat of the golden flame was right on top of Zhuofan. The power was so much that it caused Zhuofan's white hair to wither. The audience gasped in worry. Some girls even cried out and looked away. A ripple spread from the dragon's forehead just then and revealed a black flame, with streaks of purple flashing now and then. Its almighty power swept everything, disintegrating all in its path. Yi Lin's spray of flames had met its match as it stopped. It was more accurate to say that it did not stop at all. Even as it kept going, it was just being pulverized once past a certain point so that it never reached Zhuofan. Zhuofan spewed blood and shook. He looked back at his dragon's soul and saw it twitch all over as the black flame was going crazy. Just like I thought, the deadliest variant. I have no way of controlling it as I am. Its power is even above the 5 great sacred beasts. Zhuofan rejoiced inside, even as the blood kept pouring out of his mouth. Chapter 7:12, Dreadful Thunder Flame. Chapter 7:12, Dreadful Thunder Flame. Proofreader, Papatonks. Who? The dreaded power blew over, making even Yi Lin, covered in flames, shiver and take a step back. His always invincible golden flame was pushed back and subdued. The dragon image around him was also on the verge of falling apart. The moment the palm-sized thunder flame showed up, it brought with it unspeakable change. The spray of golden flames never even touched Zhuofan, pulverized ahead of schedule due to the thunder flame. Yi Lin was dumbstruck. How can this be? What the hell is that thing anyway? How can it make the decimating golden flame unable to fight back at all? How much terrifying power does that guy have? Yi Lin squinted, his eyes vacant as he stared at the thunder flame on the dragon's forehead. To him, the 5 great sacred beasts' powers were supreme. When was there a time they would shirk away instead? Never. Not even the 5 great sacred beasts would believe the world would have such kind of power either. Yet reality proved otherwise. A terrible power that surpassed all was about to be born. All of it came from Zhuofan's powers he got from those emperors and sacred beasts then fused them. This aura is the same I felt when Steward Zhuo came from his room. No, even worse. Kuei Lang shuddered at the sight of that power capable of destroying anything and everything. He gulped in fear. The rest bobbed their heads in reflex, staring at it with soaked backs. They had no clue what ultimate move Zhuo Fan pulled to unleash such power, but they were afraid of it. The Ultimate Clarity Sect team had it worse. Wu Qingqiu's face fell the instant the thunder flame showed up. He had no clue about what Zhuo Fan did, but he could feel that this power was beyond Yilin's golden flame. He had an inkling this power was not something a human should have. It felt like it was an omen to the destruction of this world. Face twitching, Wu Qingqiu gnashed his teeth and forced a smile. Gods, just how far did those two's fight go? I have no doubt the two would be leveling Double Dragon Manor if they fight like this again. Senior brother, why you're exaggerating? They're only at the ethereal stage. The Double Dragon Manor has the exalted, so they can't let it happen. One disciple said. Wu Qingqiu shook his head with a solemn look. You're still green and can't see it. This isn't about strength, but being worlds apart among each other. You all know just how deadly Junior Brother's golden flame can be, but that black thunder flame gives me an even worse feeling. I firmly believe the exalted couldn't block this thunder flame that isn't any less than the golden flame. Wu Qingqiu's brow was soaked as he watched on. This frickin' fight is beyond outrageous. One more dreadful than the other. They're just not human. SSS. The audience watched the image on the screen fading to static, and the gatekeepers made constant signs to change the angle to restore the signal. The thing was, it was always further and further away from the fight. When the image finally stabilized, they were watching from 3 miles away. All the audience saw were the two dots standing still, while the dazzling flame spray and the black flame on Dragon's forehead were at odds. What happened? Why is the image so far away? Exalted He Ran asked the two elders. One of them bowed. Exalted, the monitoring arrays around the two have some interference and stops us from looking closer. The closest one working is this monitoring array 3 miles away. What? Exalted by Mei cried out. All the monitoring arrays in that valley were set up with sacred stones. You can't even destroy them easily. And now, when the two are even fighting each other, we can't even. Exalted by Mei thought about something and gave a shocked look to Exalted He Ran. Exalted He Ran was a bit lost. Don't tell me that just the shockwaves of their fight was enough to damage the monitoring arrays. Not even we can do that. Exalted He Ran turned to look at the screen and stared at the black flash and Yilin's alarmed face. Even with Zhuo Fan's pale face, the flame did not get any closer. It was the Exalted that sprung into action. Exalted by Mei reacted as well and was shocked. You mean to tell me that black things ripple can destroy sacred stones? This never happened no matter how many times the azure flame or golden flame clashed. Yet it happened with the black flame. That meant this black flame was a cut above those other two, a terrifying existence. But can Zhuo Fan control such power? Looking at Zhuo Fan shaking and spitting blood, Exalted by Mei tensed and got his answer. He can't for now. But since it was now out, he had to withstand its pressure to the end, unless he wanted the flame to lash out and destroy him. No wonder he never used it in his fight with Yilin till his spirit animal got heavily wounded. This was a move that put one's life on the line, only worth taking out when you wanted the other one deader than dead. It was going even further than Yilin burning his soul. If Zhuo Fan's move fizzled out, his soul would go down with it. If he succeeded, then Yilin in his soul and body combined form would be toast. One was bound to die here. He Ran saw this and sprung into action. Whoosh! With a flick of the hand, a black glow flashed and then a white tunnel appeared. Exalted He Ran went through it and entered the valley. The audience was speechless. Where's Exalted He Ran going now? They never saw the Exalted being nervous before. In the valley, Zhuo Fan kept puking blood, his body popping and spreading blood as well. Even so, he bore it. The dreadful thunder flame was so insidious it ate his body as well. His dragon soul was shaking, on the verge of crumbling under the thunder flame's power. Zhuo Fan grinned, despite it all, seeing the flames unable to touch him. There's always a way out in every crisis. The thunder was dangerous, but quite handy at the very least. Only with this dreadful power can I waste you, punk. Zhuofan narrowed his eyes and began to move his hands. His dragon soul jerked and slowly opened its maw. The thunder flame slowly moved from the forehead to its throat. Yet they both looked ready to fall to the ground at the slightest breeze. To Yilin, though, it was pure horror. He was actually scared for once, and backed away. Maybe it was the first time he felt something like this. This minute thunder flame was giving him the worst feeling he ever felt. Gulping, Yilin stared at Zhuofan, nervous and shaking. Zhuofan's signs finally drew to a close and he sported a nasty grin. It seems my risk paid off and you, brat, are going to suffer for it. Wraith Style's third move, Necro Dragon Screech. Roar! The shockwave shook the world around as the dragon roared. The thunder flame turned into a snake in its throat and darted forth. It was a snake no bigger than a meter. In all of Zhuofan's Necro Dragon Screech he used, this was the worst looking by far. Yet, this tiny snake gave Yilin the feeling of impending doom. Chapter 713, Finale. Chapter 713, Finale. Proofreader, Papatonks. Boom! The small black thunder flame struck like lightning. It entered Yilin's flames then exploded into nothing. Yet it just kept on going, right for Yilin. What? A mere thunder flame is so strong. Squinting, Yilin now witnessed its power while also feeding his fears. That thing was incredibly deadly, no matter how tiny it looked. Yilin backed away, now soaked in sweat. He rushed to make signs and ignite his soul to bolster the golden flame around him. He formed around himself a dazzling barrier of flames which made him very pale. He knew better than anyone just how powerful his flames were. Even so, he knew the tiny thunder flame had to be even worse. Yilin gnashed his teeth, but his body kept on shaking. Wu Qingqiu was filled with worry. It was the first time he saw his prideful junior brother so afraid. Exalted by Mei was stupefied as the flames were gone in a blink. The thunder flame was even stronger than he thought. The black flame shouldn't have been able to do that, since the golden flames were unleashed through Yilin's burning of his soul. Its power was just short of blowing one's soul up. Yet even so, it still did it. Thank God, that old-timer is going, or Yilin might be a goner. Seeing the black thunder flame shot forward, Exalted by Mei gasped. The audience was simply slack-jawed. None saw Zhuofan's comeback to be so utterly overwhelming. He didn't just turn the tables, he even forced the enemy to face death. It was only made more apparent after Zhuofan and Xiaoer barely managed to stop the attack last time. Wen Tao was dumbfounded and sighed, "Tianshang, I think I get what you mean. Brother Zhuo isn't one to be messed with. I never thought that angering him would result in taking out that deadly thing. I bet Yilin must be feeling the worst right now. He's facing something that shirked off his attack that he burned his soul to unleash. Ugh! I didn't know he was hiding this either." Xie Tianshang shook his head. Zhuofan's bag of tricks is bottomless. No one ever knows what his final ace is. All the mystery revolving around him is what makes everyone fear him. Only when fighting him for real, will people feel true terror. Wen Tao gave him a look and then nodded. Yilin's devotion to his path was strong, but even deadlier was Zhuofan, who had endless tricks up his sleeves. Then the outcome. Whoosh! A crisp sound entered the people's ears and the thunder flame was right at Yilin, cracking space on its way. Zhuofan stared with a smile. The people were tense and excited. Exalted by Mei was frowning in worry. What's taking that old coot so long? But no one was more frantic than Yilin, having to face the thunder flame. His face hardened and his brow knitted as his hands made a sign, shaking as he stared at the deadly thunder flame. The golden flame around him was everything he had put out. All his power was now on display, focused on defense. He had given all he had and now he was pale. Yet even this was of no comfort to him, feeling not even this was enough in this matter of life and death. But that was all he could muster. The two thus unleashed their very last drop of power, the outcome about to be decided in this final clash. The two looked grave, waiting for this to end. Whoosh! The black thunder flame finally struck Yi Lin's flaming defense. Yi Lin's heart tightened and the golden flames erupted. The audience looked on, tense. Zhuo Fan's face fell as he glanced at the unconscious Chao, waiting for the finale. Bam! The loud explosion destroyed Yi Lin's wall. He shook from the blow and spat out blood, but kept his fearful eyes forward. The black thunder flame snake was coming for him. I'm done for. Yi Lin felt crushed in the face of such terrible power. Junior brother. Wu Qingqiu cried out, without any use. He wouldn't be able to help even if he got there. The others looked on tense. Exalted by Mei frowned harder. Only Zhuo Fan had on an evil smirk, his eyes glinting with joy. That's what you get for harming my daughter, you prick. Seizing Dragon Claw. An aged voice gave signal to the appearance of a faint dragon claw, grabbing the thunder flame snake and stopping it from skewering Yi Lin. The thunder flame halted on the spot and Yi Lin could breathe easy at long last. I'm saved. Zhuo Fan frowned and saw an old man approaching. The people looked on in shock. What's Exalted He Ran doing there? Then it was made obvious as he saved Yi Lin. Yi Lin must be somebody to get an Exalted to save him. Exalted by Mei eased a breath at Exalted He Ran's success. Thank God he made it, or Zhuo Fan would have finished Yi Lin off. What's the meaning of this, Exalted He Ran? Is the time up yet? Zhuo Fan glared at the old man in a foul mood. Exalted He Ran shook his head, kid, the outcome is obvious. What does it matter now? Double Dragon Gathering has rules. Unless one side admits defeat or is crushed, can the other win? Exalted should be more clear on this than me. Zhuo Fan huffed, Exalted, the Western lands are watching. You can't go about doing what you will, you'll damage Double Dragon Manor's name. Exalted He Ran's face twitched. The brat is so stubborn. I get you want Yi Lin's head on a platter, but must you mock me with the competition? Exalted He Ran knew Zhuo Fan's anger came from his hurt spirit animal. He would need to be diplomatic in this if he wanted to appease him. So he gave Yi Lin a look. Call it quits already, boy. Face the facts. Besides, you already won by getting saved. Getting his hint, Yi Lin turned to Zhuo Fan, yet he couldn't for the life of him open his mouth. As a sacred beast inheritor, there were no quitters, only dead ones who lost. The golden flames around Yi Lin were still shielding him, his eyes still thirsting for battle. Exalted He Ran sighed. Pig-headed. A bang sounded just then and Exalted He Ran's claw made the thunder flame snake explode. The thunder flame snake was soon reduced to nothing, yet a sliver of black slipped through, shooting for Yi Lin. It entered his body in that instant. Explosions came one after another, followed by flashes of lightning. After a long torrent of blood was spewed out, Yi Lin looked on with wide and incredulous eyes as he feebly said, that thing is brutal. I can't fight it even if I stake my life. Master. I lost. Plop. Yi Lin fell in his own blood, shocking everyone. Exalted He Ran's hand shook, his face a mask of shock. Even though it was under his control, a bit escaped and entered Yi Lin. What is that thing? Exalted He Ran glanced at Zhuo Fan in fear. Chapter 714, Open. Chapter 714, Open. Proofreader, Papatonks. The exalted double dragons were the strongest in Western lands and no one could take a life around them unless they allowed it, not even Dan Qingshen could do it. Evidently, this incident left everyone gasping, even the exalted. Zhuo Fan, not even in the ethereal stage mind you, released some black snake that no matter how strong, Exalted He Ran still caught it. It was plain for all to see. Yet even so, when Exalted He Ran felt in control, the unexpected happened. His claw was overcome in the explosion and the one he was supposed to save got hit hard. It left the entire crowd picking their jaws off the floor. Zhuo Fan is a frickin' savage. He actually got to hurt someone under the Exalted's protection in front of everyone. This has never happened. Yan Nimo chuckled, the entire Western lands are going to know him now. One day, he'll even be the best in Western lands as well. The crowd started talking to each other in hushed tones. Mystical Heaven sex girls were gesticulating and clamoring. Only Xian Xiaoyu went dark there, his heart consumed by rage. This accursed bastard still got on top. The entire scene was noisy, all shocked by what they witnessed. Exalted by Mei stood there for a moment, lost. Even he found it hard to believe even with that old-timer's intervention, it would still end up like this. I should have gone there as well. But then he shook his head, ha ha ha, hindsight truly is 20/20. With how fast it all happened, it wouldn't make a difference if I went too. The one to blame is that weird thunder flame able to destroy the claw. The question now though, is Yilin alive? Bai Mei looked on with worry, since this was his future disciple. Junior brother. Wu Qingqiu rushed as he saw Yilin collapsing and held him up. Exalted He Ran was still too out of it to react. Now, when he came to, he glanced at Zhuo Fan with utter disbelief. If he has the power to ruin my move now, what will his future hold? A true battle of freaks. With limitless potential. Zhuo Fan saw Yilin was going down and sported a most pleased smile. Then he puked blood and went down next to Qiaoer, feeble and pale. The black thunder flame was damn strong, but to withstand its power, Zhuo Fan's body had to pay the toll. He was only standing by sheer willpower, and now that it was over, he fell down. Exalted He Ran understood why as well. Choosing to hurt himself if it meant taking down the enemy. Zhuo Fan may be just as wounded at Yilin because of it. Oh, Yilin. Is he dead? Finally getting his wits about him, Exalted He Ran rushed over. Wu Qingqiu, how's your junior brother? Thank you for your concern, Exalted. Junior brother is in a very critical state, but he still has a breath left. He should recover. Wu Qingqiu bowed. Exalted He Ran nodded and then heard Zhuo Fan sighing, humph, he still breathes after all. It's all that damn old coot's fault, ruining most of the thunder flame's power and leaving just a sliver. Hey, that old coot is right here. Don't think I can't hear just 'cause you're mumbling. Are you trying to make me look even worse? Exalted He Ran glared at him then shook his head. You and Yilin are rare talents in Western lands. We don't want to see any of you die. I might have come to Yilin's rescue, but I would have done the same if it were you instead. Zhuo Fan simply lay there in silence. He knew the instant the old guy showed up that getting revenge for Qiaoer and killing Yilin was almost impossible. But even he didn't think the thunder flame was so nifty it escaped Exalted He Ran's control and struck that punk half dead. Now his anger was mostly abated. That left Qiaoer's worst state as the problem. The beam of light showed up once more in the valley. Exalted He Ran was the first to walk to it. Time's up. The fight's verdict is up to the judge. Then he was gone. Wu Qingqiu glanced at Zhuo Fan with a complex look. He just sighed and signaled for his team to retreat. Demon-scheming sex disciples rushed over for Zhuo Fan's orders. After they got the thunder ring and put Qiaoer inside, someone helped him go through the light. All soon left the valley, leaving only Dan Qingshan hiding in a corner. Kid, you're the first in history to wound someone in front of Exalted He Ran, ha ha ha. Dan Qingshan vanished from his spot as well. Clap. When the teams were back, they were showered in applause. Yilin and Zhuo Fan's fight had been an amazing display of power, the best of the best. The people had also come to terms with who was the future best in Western lands as well. Cough, cough, cough. The judge cleared his throat, looking from the unconscious Yilin on Wu Qingqiu's back to the weary Zhuo Fan held by Kui Lang. I have been a judge at Double Dragon Gathering for 5 times. I had seen my fair share of disciples, but only you filled me with hope for the Western lands. You've done well, ha ha ha. The judge then turned serious. It's time to pass the verdict. In this Ultimate Clarity Sect vs Demons Scheming Sect challenge fight, Ultimate Clarity Sect came back with 1 wounded and Demons Scheming Sect came back with 1 wounded. The result is a draw. Wait! Wu Qingqiu cried out. They all watched as he looked at Zhuofan. The team battle's outcome is dependent on Yilin and Zhuofan's fight. Junior brother will most likely not like it, but a loss is a loss. Yilin lost to Zhuofan and that means Ultimate Clarity Sect lost to Demon Scheming Sect. The judge froze then nodded. Wu Qingqiu, the loss of a team battle affects the entire sect. Will your elders approve of this? As far as I know, you're one of the few sects that did not come with a venerable. It shows how confident the sect is in you. Ultimate Clarity Sect has always been carefree, not after fame and wealth. A loss is a loss. There's nothing more to it. Twisting our path just for a bit of something goes against our sect's teachings. Wu Qingqiu held his head high as he declared, earning everyone's admiration. The judge nodded. In that case, the first of the 9 sects will be. The judge paused for effect, looking at Demon Scheming Sect. The fiends were overexcited now, never believing their eyes. They were at the top. Then a cold voice came, wait. Now the eyes darted on Zhuofan. Ugh, now what? The judge frowned. Zhuofan said, nothing really, just that we can't take the top position. Brother Zhua, it's what you get for winning. Zhuofan waved his hand at Wu Qingqiu, Brother Wu, since it's a team battle, it is 10 against 10. Yilin and my fight was just a single fight. If I still had some fight left afterwards, then I would have taken it of course, ha ha ha. However, you can all see my state. And the rest of our disciples are no match. This team battle is our loss. I may not be a nice guy, but I am open in my actions. I don't take more than I deserve. I can't take it or I'll see it as charity and will be nothing more than an insult. Wu Qingqiu shook and cupped his hands. Brother Zhua, you may be a demonic cultivator, but you truly are a gentleman. No, I just have a mean guy's pride, ha ha ha, Zhuofan chuckled. Chapter 7:15, Ranks. Chapter 7:15, Ranks. Proofreader, Papatonks. The judge looked from one to the other and nodded, good, since you both don't care about it. Zhuofan's words make a lot more sense as to how this team battle ended. Thus, I shall declare Ultimate Clarity Sect as the slightly better victor. The crowd exploded in applause, not just for the nominal winner, Ultimate Clarity Sect, but for Zhuofan as well, this soft meanie. Zhuofan's open manner of only taking what he deserved let the people see that nasty demonic cultivators had their own elegance. Demon Soul Sect nodded, looking at Zhuofan as the model example of a demonic cultivator. Yen Imo sighed as he watched him, even demons have their path. Maybe I've been indulging too much as of late, ha ha ha. Sister Qingqing, he just gave up the glory of being at the top. Those venerables of theirs have to be fuming mad. Danner batted her pretty eyes in shock, this chance may come only once. Maybe the next time they come to Double Dragon Gathering, they won't get any higher. Chu Qingqing smiled, her gaze soft as she was reminded of 100 Pill meeting. That's who he is. He's the same as before. The girls noticed what she meant and nodded. As they looked at Zhuofan, their gazes were taking different meanings. Only Xian Xiaoyu was raging inside. Zhuofan's win had earned everyone's approval, he even refused fame. Funny how this was exactly Mystical Heaven Sect's aim when they plotted against Demon Scheming Sect. There were already people whispering and mocking Mystical Heaven Sect. Some even reached his ears. It only worked to make his heart rage harder. Zhuofan had been up to his tricks many times in his fight, yet Mystical Heaven Sect only did it once. Now Zhuofan was hailed as a hero and them as hypocrites. How is that fair? He had no clue though, that Zhuofan was no goody-goody, but was cunning and vile. Even so he had principles that he would not cross. This was what got everyone's attention. Xian Xiaoyu side, on the other hand, was a righteous sect that had deviated from their path. That was why they were given dirtier looks than the demonic cultivators. That showed that an open meanie was better than a shameless hypocrite to make friends with. It was all because the former had a code they knew he followed, while the latter could stab you in the back anytime anywhere they saw fit. Though these reasons weren't noticed by many, their basic instinct made them feel who was the better choice. So the voice of the people hailed Zhuofan, a demonic cultivator, while it denounced Xian Xiaoyu, a righteous cultivator, the hypocrite. That old coot, he's been 5 times a judge at Double Dragon gatherings, yet this is the first time I see him so biased. Ultimate Clarity Sect is the winner, and that's that. What's with that slightly better, ha ha ha, Exalted He Ran chuckled. Exalted by Mei smiled. He meant to say that this was Zhuofan's win, but since it's a team battle, Ultimate Clarity Sect has 9 more members that are slightly better than Zhuofan's current state. That's why they won. He's clearly giving your demonic disciple some fame. Old timer, I wasn't going to say he was siding with you, but you started it, being petty even after looking good. How is it looking good? When Zhuofan enters Double Dragon Manor, it will be the 2 of us who teach him. You're in it as well. Please. Exalted by Mei rolled his eyes and teased, he's a demonic cultivator, right up your alley. My teachings to him can only be assistance. The one to truly learn from me can only be Yilin. He might have lost, but under my wing, he will soar. You better remember our deal then, old timer. Of course, the 2 will fight again to see who's better. Exalted He Ran smiled. Exalted by Mei nodded, good, we still don't know who among us is better after so many years, so we will let the disciples decide, ha ha ha. The 2 burst out laughing. The judge saw the noise around him and raised his hand for silence. Western Land's Double Dragon gathering has now come to a close. Next comes tallying up the score for singles and team fights to assess the sect's ranks as well as see the 10 best disciples in Western Lands. The judge shouted with a cold gaze, making everyone's mood turn heavy. Chapter 716, Future Allies and Enemies. Chapter 716, Future Allies and Enemies. Proofreader, Papatonks. At the center of the stage, the 3 elders were holding a silk sheet and were constantly writing and calculating the sect's scores. All were watching with tense faces. However, that did not apply to the demon scheming sect. They did not care much about those 3 oldies and swept the crowd. Zhuofan pointed out as he explained, no one must become fat in one hall, or the consequences would not be worth the gain. In the Double Dragon gathering, we have earned a good result, enough to support the sect's future and development for a long time. So, in the end, our ranking doesn't matter. What we need to focus on is doing that without outside interference. That depends on checks and balances between the major sects present here. That's where we need to focus. Getting to be an underdog in the Double Dragon gathering for a huge reward is only a small part of our gain in this competition. The real win is getting friendly with the sections. Zhuofan's eyes flashed and pointed at each one. Among the middle 3 sects, Demon Souls sect owes us a favor and should be friendly. The Sword Gods sect became friends through battle and should be a good ally. As for the superior 3 sects, although I heavily wounded Yilin, Wu Qingqiu is a man of honor and should be easy to get close to. Hellion Flame, by definition we have a little scuffle with them. But I don't see any hatred in Yen Imo at us, so we can consider them neutral. Zhuofan then frowned as he decided with a sigh, Hellion Flame can be approached. What? His team cried out, Zhuofan, you almost killed Yen Imo last time. How can we get close when he loads us? Zhuofan nodded and said, that's called judging a book by its cover. Yes, Hellion Flame can be approached. While last time we fought, meeting Hellion Flame again, Yen Imo and the others did not hate us, fighting us just like everyone else. Although I don't know why that happened, I am sure there's no bad blood between us anymore. They say love and hate are both sides of the same coin. If such deep hatred is resolved, we'll become even closer. Clapping, Zhuofan came to the last names. There are 4 sects we need to befriend: Ultimate Clarity Sect, Hellion Flame, Sword Gods Sect and Demon Souls Sect. They may very well help us avoid many troubles later on. But we only made friends with 4 disciples. It's not their venerables. How can they ask their sects to help us? Kuei Gang asked hesitatingly. The others looked at Zhuo Fan for an answer. Zhuo Fan grinned, his eyes sparkling. Ever heard of growing into one's role? That means becoming friends before they become big to help you later. Every participant here is but a disciple, but all are pillars of their sect, especially the ones returning alive. They will become eminent figures. All those old-timers back home are just going to offend these future big shots. As long as the sect's foundation ain't threatened, they will listen. Especially with Wu Qingqiu and Yi Lin, they can even decide the sect's future. That's why it's totally worth getting closer to them. But, what trouble could we possibly have? Yue frowned. Zhuo Fan shook his head and patted her head. Lass, you really have holes for eyes. In these days of double dragon gathering, haven't you realized how many toes we crushed? We need to keep our guard up around the universal righteous sect, heaven trailing sect, mystical heaven sect and beast taming sect. As to why they hate us, I'm sure you can tell. Sigh, if I knew this, I wouldn't have gone against them. Fiend Yang shook his head. It's unclear if those new friends can be of help, but those 4 we really pissed them off. Nothing good will come of it. Zhuo Fan rolled his eyes and mocked, you must be delusional. Joining the Double Dragon gathering, you can offend anyone in the deathmatches. It's the only way to go forward. The question is who to offend and who to get close to. The good thing is the sects we chose are all stronger than our enemies and far more trustworthy. The Universal Righteous Sect, for instance, throws away its own people. Even if we hadn't messed with them, I still wouldn't want to get anywhere near them. The rest nodded in unison. Moreover, there's no absolute neutrality in this world. There are allies and enemies. Absolute neutrality will only make you a target. That's why through these battles, I was choosing allies and your future enemies. Us? Everyone looked at Zhuo Fan in shock. Zhuo Fan grinned, you're going to know this sooner or later, so I might as well tell you now. I've had a talk with the sect leader before coming here. After Double Dragon gathering, I will be leaving the sect. What I say now is my last piece of advice for the labor office. Although I don't much care for the labor office, but I raised it and don't want to see it in danger of destruction. You will be the sect's future big shots and need to remember your allies and enemies. Otherwise, the demon scheming sect will crumble after it sticks out of the crowd. Wait, why are you leaving? You got all the credit for the Double Dragon gathering and sect leader Ren will name you as the next, Fiend Yang cried. The others were anxious and nodded as well. Zhuo Fan might be a bit harsh, but without him, there wouldn't be them. This made all of them appreciate him more. Zhuo Fan smiled and waved, you don't have to say it. I only came with the demon scheming sect because of a deal. Now that I have finished my part, it's time to head home. Home? They all looked at Zhuo Fan in shock as their hearts were overcome with sadness. Steward Zhuo has his own home. He never saw the demon scheming sect as one. Fiend Yang sighed and nodded. Then we won't force the issue. But remember, from now on, you don't have just one home. All the disciples, elders and venerables at the labor office won't ever forget you. No matter when you'll return, you'll always be Steward Zhuo. The labor office never had a steward to begin with, but ever since Steward Zhuo came, everyone always called you that. It sounds just like a clan's. Brothers should be closer, to stand united and repel outsiders. Yu Ling looked at him with a soft gaze. The others also cherished Zhuo Fan. Zhuo Fan's eyelids shook. He didn't care much for that place. He only saw it as a base to seize power. But he had to admit that he left something there after all. From helping Yue and Kuei Gang recover their cultivation, to establishing elite labor office, laughing at the inner sect, all of it did make the disciples gain self-respect and power. The labor office was a tight group now, no different from a home. But it was not what he yearned for. Zhuo Fan took a deep breath and smiled, his journey in the demon scheming sect had come to an end. And it wasn't such a bad trip either. The Double Dragon Gathering scores have been set. Please check them, Exalted. The elders on the stage had finished and they bowed as the judge declared. Exalted Ran took the silken sheet and nodded alongside Exalted by May. The judge turned around at the 9 sects and shouted, "The 9 sects ranks at the Double Dragon Gathering have been set. Disciples, step on the stage to hear Exalted's words." Yes. They all cupped their hands and assembled on the stage with hard looks. Even the heavily wounded Juefan was helped up. Who fell, who rose? All was written clearly on that thin silk sheet. Chapter 717, 9 Sex Positions. Chapter 717, 9 Sex Positions. Proofreader, Papatonks. Everyone looked up at the highest seats and at what Exalted Ran held with deep frowns, gulping and sweating in anxiety as their nails dug into their hands. Only the demon scheming sect was chill. They just didn't care about the ranks. Just like Juefan said, a weak sect like theirs shouldn't aim too high. Without high expectations there was nothing to be tense about. They were more sad about their leader, Juefan, leaving them. I shall now declare the 9 sex positions in the Double Dragon Gathering. Exalted Ran cleared his throat. We begin with the beast-taming sect, the last in the lower 3 sects. Exalted Ran's declaration earned a mocking look from the crowd. At the start of the lower 3 sect stage, Juefan wiped them out in one punch. Even their elder was culled soon after. If they wasn't dead last, who would be? They were indeed shit out of luck to meet a freak like Juefan right off the bat. Juefan's power was soon made public in a fantastic display. Their demise, obvious, haha. The last among the middle 3 sects. Exalted Ran continued and the people tuned in. Heaven Trailing Sect's young master was even more attentive. That was their spot since coming here. Though unclear if they kept it after all the changes. They were sweating now, eyes bloodshot, as they awaited Exalted Ran to say those little words. It was never meant to be though, as Exalted Ran said, Demon Soul Sect. The Han brothers shook their heads. They planned on moving up at least a spot but ended up moving a spot backward. They had no idea how they were going to break this to their harsh old man. While they were hesitating, Rin Song was frozen in place. If Demon Soul's sect got last place in the middle 3 sects, then Heaven Trailing Sect was in the lower 3 sects. The young master felt like crying. Getting home would get his dad to thrash him. How could we fall so low? The last among the superior 3 sects. Ignoring those 2 sects' sadness, Exalted Ran kept on declaring, Sword God Sect. When Tao's team was stunned, then went wild with joy. They actually upgraded their class, from middle 3 sect to superior 3 sect. They thought that by losing to Juefan and being wounded in the challenge stage, they lost their chance. Now, it seemed that they did it. Even if it was the last spot, it was still worth an achievement. Juefan's side stuck to their ally-making policy and congratulated them. When Tao kept cupping his hands in reply with a beaming smile. Though one sect's fortune was another's sadness. Universal Righteous Sect's Xiao Dezhu was dumbstruck. For Sword God Sect to go up, one had to go down. As to who that was, it went without saying that it was the weakest. Xiao Dezhu's lip shivered, feeling endless sadness. This was the worst performance in all Double Dragon gatherings. How was he going to explain it back home? Looking aside, Exalted Ran showed a mocking smile as he continued, lower 3 sects mid-position, Mystical Heavens Sect. Xian Xiaoyu and the elder eased a breath. This was the usual result at least. Though they failed to be the first lower 3 sect. The girls didn't care much about it. Those glistening pairs of eyes only watched Juefan, as if the demon scheming sect spot was far more important. Middle 3 sect's second spot, Universal Righteous Sect. Exalted Ran looked right at Xiao Dezhu when he shouted. The crowd was in an uproar. A great superior 3 sect had not only fallen from grace but went down to ranks. The Universal Righteous Sect's elders were bound to go mad from the news. While the people did not know if they would, they did hear Zhao Dezhu go insane first as he argued, "Hold on, Exalted. What is this? Universal Righteous Sect is a superior 3 sect, how did it fall so much? Humph, you should be asking your scheming mind." Exalted He ran disdained, "When you fought Hellion Flame and Ultimate Clarity Sect, you always held back, so much so you earned little points. In the Superior 3 Sects challenge stage, you routed Demon's Scheming Sect, but in the end, your score dropped to rock bottom, earning your current rank as second Middle 3 Sect." Zhao Dezhu shook like a leaf, his butt hitting the ground hard from shock. How can this be? The points for fighting in the Superior 3 Sect singles are far more than in the other categories. How? You're right, but that's because the Superior 3 Sects disciples are much stronger. But that only means by forfeiting the deduction is even greater. Exalted by May's eyes were sharp as he said flatly, "Your great scheming has brought you this low. I hope that as a second Middle 3 Sect you and your sect will calm down and focus on your path and not scheme for fame and wealth. As you know, scheming comes with risks. If it fails, you're the one to suffer for it." Zhao Dezhu sat there on the ground, lost, not even hearing his advice. The Exalted shook their heads and Exalted He Ran continued, "Superior 3 Sects mid-position, Hellion Flame." Yen Imo nodded and eased a breath. At least they kept their spot. They were really scared the Demon's Scheming Sect would have taken it. And now, it's time to announce the top positions. Exalted He Ran finally came to the final 3 names. The crowd went quiet and waited with bated breaths. Lower 3 Sects top position, Heaven Trailing Sect. Exalted He Ran's shout pierced Ren Tsong's ears. He had seen it coming, but it still came as a blow. He was shaking so hard, the breeze might topple him. It was too much for him to take. In the end, he chose to glare at Zhuofan. "It's all that punk's fault. I won't ever let you go. Just wait, you'll get yours." Ren Tsong's eyes flashed as he started making his plans. Middle 3 Sects top position, Demon Scheming Sect. Exalted He Ran finally uttered the greatest underdog's name, but the gang were all smiles. That threw the crowd off. Even the Exalted were curious. They got such restraint. They were clearly something more to keep their cool after hearing they went from lower 3 sects to top middle 3 sections. Or was it the least of their expectations, since they aimed for superior 3 sects? How would they know the Demon Scheming Sect team's mood was more affected by Zhuofan's leaving? Zhuofan had got them all the way here without a scratch. Now that he left, they couldn't be happy even if they wanted to. Shrugging, the Exalted scratched their heads. Exalted He Ran declared the last spot, Superior 3 Sects top position, Ultimate Clarity Sect. The king in the Western lands, Ultimate Clarity Sect, had never fallen off his throne. But everyone, even Ultimate Clarity Sect, were clear how dangerous it was to maintain it. Giving Zhuofan a long look, Wu Qingqiu sighed, "I hope the next Double Dragon gathering we won't meet that freak again." Wu Qingqiu wiped his brow recalling the fight. The 9 sects now had their new status. What followed next was what they were waiting for. The share of sacred stones the Double Dragon Manor bestowed at Double Dragon Gathering. Exalted He Ran sat down and Exalted by May began. According to Double Dragon Gathering's results, the sacred stones shall be split as follows. The top Superior 3 Sect, Ultimate Clarity Sect, will receive 100,000, the Hellion Flame 50,000 and Sword God Sect 30,000. Everyone was shocked. So much? Only the elders that had been to past Double Dragon gatherings shook their heads. Much? That goes to the winner. Double Dragon Manor ain't so generous to losers. Chapter 718, Crownless King. Chapter 718, Crownless King. Proofreader, Papatonks. Top of the middle 3 sects, the Demon Scheming Sect, receives 10,000, the Universal Righteous Sect receives 5,000 and the Demon Soul Sect 3,000. Exalted by May's shout echoed in everyone's ears, shocking them to the core. The middle 3 sects had received so little compared to the superior 3 sects, only a little over 10,000 in total. The people that thought Double Dragon Manor was generous changed their thinking. They're so restrained with the sacred stones. The rewards for the middle three sects took a sharp decline. Then what about the lower three sects? Some were happy, some were despairing. The demon scheming sect had only ever got a bunch of scraps of sacred stones whenever it came to double dragon gathering. They hardly had anything to develop when they used most of them in the sect's defenses. Only this time, they got a whole 10,000 of them. The fiends were ecstatic. It was something they would never get even in dozens of double dragon gatherings combined. They really won big this time. The demon scheming sect felt they were loaded all of a sudden. These stones would help develop the sect for the decades to come and finally shed their former lower three sect self. All became possible under Zhuofan's leadership. They looked at him with respect and admiration, yet it only made his leaving that much harder to bear. However, Zhuofan did not care about it at all. Ignoring the fact he cleaned Double Dragon Manor's sacred mine, that had around 1 million of those glittering baubles, the stuff he got from Kunpeng should last him for lifetimes. As the demon scheming sect was cheering at their wealth, the universal righteous sect found itself dirt poor. 5,000 sacred stones were substantial to anyone, but the universal righteous sect had been a superior 3 sect and earned 30,000 in their last spot there. As a large sect, they were used to having a large treasury to fund their disciples and elders. But just these scraps now hardly made the cut. Until the next double dragon gathering hundreds of years from now, they'd have to tighten that belt a lot. Maybe they would weaken so much they would never reach superior 3 sects again. The dark-faced Zhao Dezhu felt like crying. We lost too much this time. How was he to know the greatest underdog, demon scheming sect, along with Sword God's sect, would reach such a level? If he had known, he'd just fought with all he had and gotten those points instead of falling so much. Vile demonic cultivators, it's all because we saved our strength to deal with you that I fell so much. Just you wait. Zhao Dezhu glared at Zhuofan, totally forgetting Exalted by Mei's words. Exalted by Mei shook his head and sighed. He's a lost cause. The Demon Souls sect had fallen as well, but just by 1 spot. They only lost 2,000 sacred stones, something they could take. Unlike the one that had it worse, they were quite calm about it. The Han brothers looked at Ren Tsong to see his dark look as he listened to Exalted by Mei's words. The top of lower 3 sects, Heaven Trailing sect receives 1,000 sacred stones, Mystical Heaven sect receives 500 and Beast Taming sect 300. This concludes the Double Dragon Gathering sacred stone distribution. Thank you, Exalted. Everyone cupped their hands and bowed, even as some were angry, some were happy and some were dejected. Mystical Heaven sect's Elder Yun glanced at Ren Tsong and saw his anger. Young Master Ren, that vile demon scheming sect has just got a lot of sacred stones, but they don't have the power of a middle 3 sect. They'll need at least 100 years to grow into their new status. Plenty of time for our chance. Does Mystical Heaven sect think so as well? Ren Tsong glanced over with a vague smile as he spoke. Elder Yun picked up on something and probed. Young Master Ren already has a plan. Humph, not mine. Someone already has his eye on that punk, waiting for the right moment. When the time comes, I hope Mystical Heaven sect will join us and not run away. Elder Yun shook and frowned. He only wanted to comfort the young master of the top 3 guardian sects and get them to push down the speedy growth of the demon scheming sect. However, he never thought the Heaven Trailing sect already had a plan to deal with him and wanted the Mystical Heaven sect to join them. Just what are they planning? If it gets out of hand, Double Dragon Manor will step in and Heaven Trailing sect will be finished. Mystical Heaven sect didn't want to go down as well. Elder Yun frowned as he pondered. Ren Tsong saw his hesitation and said, "No worries, I know what you're afraid of. Double Dragon Manor doesn't want Western Land's power to drop and is on the lookout for any conflict between sections. But you should know not everyone's house affairs are so easily settled." You mean? Elder Yun was stunned. Ren Tsong cast a nasty look at Zhuofan as he smiled eerily. Even in demon scheming sect, not everyone took a liking to this punk. When the time comes, the demon-scheming sect would fail its duties so much, the Exalted can't do anything. Unless they don't want to lead the Western lands. Elder Yun pondered and nodded. Next are the individual scores in the Double Dragon Gathering for the best 10 disciples in Western lands and their rewards. Exalted by Mei and Exalted He Ran spoke up. The people turned solemn and eager. Yan Imo, Xie Tianshang and the other competitive ones were looking forward to it as well. Exalted He Ran stood up and spoke. In this Double Dragon Gathering, the 10th disciple in Western lands is 3rd Young Master Han from Demon Soul Sect. 100 sacred stones. 3rd Young Master Han was stunned. He never thought he'd be among the ranking. Exalted He Ran continued, the 9th place goes to 2nd Young Master Han, 200 sacred stones. The brothers shouted in joy. They both made it and now had a chance of getting into Double Dragon Manor. The 8th place goes to Ren Song, 300 sacred stones. 7th place, Xie Tianshang, 400. 6th place, Han Yunfeng, 500. 5th place, Wen Tao, 600. 4th place, Zhao Dezhu, 700. 3rd place, Yan Imo, 800. 2nd place Wu Qingqiu, 900. 1st place. Exalted He Ran paused for effect, getting everyone excited. The 2 strongest in this Double Dragon Gathering were Zhuofan and Yilin, but none of their names was among those 9 places. Did Yilin die? Is that why Exalted He Ran didn't announce him? The people started looking dejected at this though and sighed. So young and so strong. What a shame. Then again, it's all his bad luck's fault for meeting one worse than himself. There's always someone stronger out there. Exalted He Ran continued at long last, 1st place Yilin, 1,000 sacred stones. What? At this news, the crowd was aboil, then confused eyes focused on Zhuofan. Why didn't the final winner get a spot as well but the loser did? Does the Double Dragon Manor have some shady agenda for the Double Dragon Gathering? But this is too shady. You think we're so blind we can't see the outcome? They recalled how Exalted He Ran rescued Yilin and they started making wild guesses that Yilin had something to do with the Exalted to be shielded. Thus forcing the best in Western lands, Zhuofan, to be a crownless king. From the moment Yilin fell, everyone saw Zhuofan as the number 1. Even if he wasn't officially recognized, everyone saw him as such. All looked at the Exalted Double Dragons with doubt and suspicion. What strings are you pulling here? Chapter 719, Challenge. Chapter 719, Challenge. Proofreader, Papatonks. The Exalted shared a look, knowing what they were thinking. The Double Dragon Manor, which was renowned for being fair for thousands of years, was now facing everyone's doubts because of one brat. They had to work hard to build up their image, only for it to collapse in an instant before they could even explain why. This only showed just how much Zhuofan grew in their eyes. Such charisma had the Exalted appreciating him more. Exalted, why isn't Zhuofan among the top 10 disciples? Wu Qingqiu bowed and asked. The crowd grew noisier as their doubts mounted. Exalted He Ran didn't say it, it is Double Dragon Manor's rule. Exalted He Ran made it so no one could challenge his decision again. None wanted to offend the strongest in Western lands. Is it? However, Wu Qingqiu smiled, bowing again, since it's Double Dragon Manor's rule, I won't pry, but I ask Exalted to take down Yilin's and my name as well. What? The crowd was speechless from shock. Wu Qingqiu continued, Exalted, I just don't want my name to be on a meaningless ranking. I wouldn't want to disgrace Double Dragon Manor's rankings. With Junior Brother's temper, I think he will want the same. So you mean our ranking was unfair and dishonors you? Exalted He Ran growled. The anger the crowd felt caused them to shiver. Wu Qingqiu shook his head, but the meaning was obvious. Ha ha ha, Exalted, how can a disciple from the Ultimate Clarity sect say something like that? I just felt Junior Brother and I will only dishonor Double Dragon Manor's ranking by being on it. If it's possible, I hope that we are taken off. The crowd gasped as to the meaning. This kid is being sarcastic, saying that Zhuo Fan isn't on the list and so he doesn't want to be on it either. By saying he dishonors the ranking, he is criticizing it for being unfair and doesn't want to stay on it. The people showed endless admiration for Wu Qingqiu's courage to speak up against the exalted. Zhuo Fan felt the same. Just like I thought, Wu Qingqiu is worth befriending. Ha ha ha, since none want to, then I'll be the first in Western lands. Then came sudden laughter that caught everyone's attention. It was Yan Imo. Giving Wu Qingqiu and Zhuo Fan a vile smile, Yan Imo shrugged. However, being called a king among these people is so boring. It's better I step out as well. Without a worthy opponent I'd only slack off and get further and further behind. Ha ha ha, brother Yan Imo is mocking everyone else. You can look down on anyone, but not the younger generation. We, the Sword God sect, are the last among the superior 3 sects and next time we will take your place. Don't you run away. Why don't we run together? Wen Tao joined the bustle. Xie Tianshang, Han Yunfeng and others renounced their spots for Zhuo Fan. The people saw for the first time how so many were against Double Dragon Manor's decision. Even the exalted didn't see it coming. This showed how much charisma Zhuo Fan had. They only met for a few days, yet these 4 great sect's disciples were on his side. The exalted smiled in appreciation. In those days, Sheng only gained recognition through power, but now this kid was truly the best in Western lands. Exalted He Ran raised his hand for silence. He spoke calmly, only far more relaxed than before. There's a reason why Zhuo Fan isn't on the 10 best disciples in Western lands. One is Double Dragon Gathering's rule, based on single matches that evaluate your skills. In these matches, Zhuo Fan only fought in the lower 3 sections. So no matter how amazing he is, his points are lacking. Of course, his outstanding display in the last challenge team battle showed otherwise. It's even reasonable to break this rule and have him on the rankings. But... what? Everyone asked. Exalted He Ran shook his head. The 10 disciples in Western lands is something we decided on, with Zhuo Fan having exceeded our evaluation. In other words, we can't appraise his strength. Just that last strike of his injured his opponent even as I interfered. One can say that even I lost to him. Though it is a matter of being careful. Exalted exaggerates. Zhuo Fan immediately cupped his hands. Exalted He Ran smiled. It's fine. We both know our own strengths, yet to wound someone with me around is already incredible. That is why we have lost the means to judge you. Ah, youths, you have your pride and beliefs, but so do we. Zhuo Fan didn't make it on the list, not because he's unworthy, but because he's gone beyond it. That is why we decided, for the first time in millennia, to add one more rank to this list. Rank 0, the Crownless King, Zhuo Fan. It means no one can grant him a title, or reward it to him. As for Sacred Stones, 2000. The crowd went slack-jawed, incredulous. The exalted Double Dragons admitted they couldn't judge a disciple. They even went as far as making a new rank just for him. The kid will definitely grow strong under the care of the 2 exalted. The crowd looked at Zhuo Fan, the future best in Western lands that had been recognized by the exalted, in shock. Wu Qingqiu and the others looked happy. As if Zhuo Fan's glory was only natural. But Zhuo Fan did not care, only making small talk with some just to get closer. As for Xian Xiaoyu, Rin Song and others, their faces fell seeing Zhuo Fan look so proud. They all turned to Lu Xia with sharp eyes. Best in Western lands? Humph. I'll make sure you never live to reach it. Everyone calm down now. Exalted by Mei stood up with a smile. Clearing his voice, Exalted by Mei began. The Double Dragon Gathering is over, with all the sect's ranks being decided. The disciples may return home. As for the disciples that enter the Double Dragon Manor, we will need some time to debate. I will then send a jade slip to notify each sect leader. You are now free to leave. Boom! Exalted by Mei got cut off by a huge explosion, making everything shake. The Exalted cried out, "The sacred mine. Start the monitoring array and see what's happening." Exalted He Ren cried out at the gatekeepers. The two elders made the signs and a screen formed to reveal a long mountain range, with an old man with a red nose hovering at the end of it with a dark look. The gulf half a mile around him was there for the audience to see as well. Just what kind of power can cause this destruction? Dan Qing Shen. The Exalted knew on the spot that this guy was challenging them. Chapter 720, Genesis Stage. Chapter 720, Genesis Stage. Proofreader, Papatonks. Senior sister, isn't that the drunkard we met in that small town? Danner pointed at the old man in the air as she asked Shui Ruahua. Shui Ruahua was startled. That's definitely him. Zhua Fan said he was an unfathomable expert and we later realized it as well, but I didn't think he'd be this strong. His power must be tyrannical to cause such a huge gulf. Chu Qingqing nodded as well. Zhua Fan looked on with a frown. Why go about sneaking in when he's now showing himself? Maybe he got pissed he didn't find the sacred weapon and figured the Exalted screwed him over. So now he drew them out. Since the cover is blown, it is over. But were the Exalted easy targets? You might be the best in Western lands, but that is when it comes to personal strength. Just how much do you have it in you to fight your two former masters? There's strength in numbers. Zhua Fan frowned. He figured this might happen. The two sides would meet and after a brief talk they'd figure out he stole the sacred weapon. Then Dan Qing and the Exalted would come to deal with him. Then again, in this deadly situation, there was still a chance they had some bad blood between them. This would lead to a misunderstanding. They all knew the sacred weapon was strong and not just anyone could wield it. But who knew the divine eye of the void could control it? This way, the sacred weapon had disappeared into thin air. They would have no choice but to ask each other for clues. Because only the three of them could get it while forgetting about him. Next would be fighting it out only to settle nothing in the end. It was his most favorite item of the day. Zhua Fan hoped his sneaky plan would go as he wished, to have both sides think the sacred weapon was on each other. And not to resolve their issues while fighting. Or they would soon suspect him. That's when I'm done for. However, the chances of that happening were highly unlikely. Or Dan Qing wouldn't just sneak in. What is he doing there? We clearly sealed the entrance, only leaving this side. Did he enter right under our noses? Exalted He Ran took a deep breath and roared in fury. Exalted by Mei just frowned in thought. Dan Qing stood before the sacred mine as he shouted at a monitoring array, "Masters, I've come to visit. Won't you see me?" "Master?" "He's from the Double Dragon Manor." The audience was stunned at this development. The Exalted felt helpless. Exalted He Ran shouted and a white gate appeared in the air. He stepped through it, with Exalted by Mei right behind him. The audience was even more perplexed. The guy called for his master, so why isn't he showing up? Does he want the Exalted to go there? Wait, does that mean the Exalted had disciples? But we know they only ever had one. The best in Western lands, Dan Qing. Everyone exclaimed. That old man standing in that storm is that strong. Yan Nemo had already guessed his identity, but hearing him admitting it still came as a shock. He was Dan Qing, and only he dared to say that none of Western Land's 10 sects could stop him. Now he came to see his old masters, the Exalted Double Dragons, the strongest in Western Lands. He did not come for a social visit though. A battle was about to break out. Seeing the three strongest in Western Lands fight makes this trip all the more worthwhile, ha ha ha. Yan Nemo was shaking in excitement. Shui Ruahua was dumbstruck. The girls knew the old man was beyond them, but they never thought he was that formidable. Yet these ignorant lasses actually tied up this monster. If not for Zhua Fan stopping these fools, they might have done something they'd regret. Shui Ruahua realized that their being alive was all thanks to Zhua Fan. All the girls looked gratefully at Zhua Fan, only to see him calmly watching the screen. Whoosh! Dan Qingshen's face twitched and said, "If that's the case, why then did you accept my greeting? A day a master, a father for life. Did we not teach you? Even if we don't see you as a disciple, you don't see us as masters. You won't greet us upon meeting us. Humph, you've become worse, I see." Exalted He Ran replied. "Ugh." Dan Qingshen groaned and sighed, "Master He Ran, you're the same as always, still so shameless. You dare talk to your master like that? As if you're any better." "Yes, I'm nothing to look at, but isn't that what my master taught me? With your shameless style, I got half of your so-called integrity. That's called rubbing off on me, ha ha ha," Dan Qingshen mocked. Exalted He Ran rolled his eyes and ignored him. He actually felt better hearing this, being brought back to those days as he taught this kid. Exalted by Mei knew his thoughts and smiled, then turned serious. "Sheng, what are you doing here? What do you want?" "I broke in to take back my sword." "Sword?" Exalted by Mei exclaimed, "The Atlas sword? It's no longer yours. Why should we return it?" "Of course it's mine," you agreed. "On the day I can beat the both of you, I have the right to inherit it. That is a promise we made to our disciple, which you no longer are." Exalted He Ran snorted. Dan Qingshen smiled and shrugged, "No matter, I'll be taking that sword today. No matter how much it costs. I didn't want to fight with masters, planning on taking it and leaving, but since you found out, we can only go by the old agreement. No matter if it's 1 or 2, I'll beat you both and take that sword." "You sure can talk. Don't think you can defeat us just because you got to stab me with a sword when you were banished." Exalted Double Dragon shouted, "In a single battle, you are the best in Western lands, but don't forget we two never separate. You still have a long way to go to be the best." Dan Qingshen was angry as he gnashed his teeth. "It doesn't matter, we'll know once we fight." His entire aura exploded. The sky dimmed as sword waves covered the heavens and cut everything they touched. The world was breaking apart before he even attacked. Everyone cried out. They would all be wiped out in an instant if that happened here. "The best in Western lands." Zhuo Fan shouted, "The peak of mortal domain, Genesis stage." Above the soul harmony stage was returning to one's ancestry, the Genesis stage. When the soul made a link with the world's power, one could truly destroy this land. It was without a doubt the strongest in the mortal domain. And this stage was where one broke the shackles of mortality, to enter Spirit King stage. Only that kind of cultivator had the right to roam the sacred domain. Chapter 721, Master and Disciple Fight. Chapter 721, Master and Disciple Fight. Proofreader, Papatonks. Dan Qingshen's surge of power covered the entire realm as it shook under it. The biting winds brushed past the exalted double dragons, forcing them to become grave as they faced this power. Hundreds of years had passed and Dan Qingshen, of course, had grown in power, so much so that they were having doubts of fighting him together. The people looked tense, and a bit excited even, at the screen, showing a scene that could only be described as a prelude to total destruction. 3 Genesis stage experts were about to fight. This was a once-in-a-blue-moon fight. "Sheng, before we fight, I want to ask you something." Exalted by Mei began. Dan Qingshen grumbled something before finally saying, "Say it. After all these years, why did you come for the sword now? Did you meet someone strong or do you just want to rule someplace? Give me a reason." Exalted He Ran looked straight at him, waiting for an answer as well. Dan Qingshen squinted and said, "Must I say it? It's fine either way, since you're no longer our disciple. You have no reason to explain yourself to us." Exalted by Mei spoke coldly. Exalted He Ran stared hard at Dan Qingshen. "We must have taught you that regardless of what you do, you should always have a reason for doing it, even if it's wrong. That way, you at least won't feel lost." As the Exalted spoke, Dan Qingshen felt he was in a particular mood. They were clearly asking Dan Qingshen if he still saw them as masters at his very core. They were testing his intentions for taking the sword and whether he was worthy of inheriting it. Dan Qingshan took a deep breath as he pondered, to be honest, 3 years later, I will have a life and death fight with the old freak from the central area. I'm sure that if I have the help of Western Land's treasure, the Atlas Sword, I will win. Central Area's Sword Star Empire's invincible sword? Exalted by Mei gasped in disbelief, how did you end up messing with him? You're even having a life and death battle? Are you crazy? Exalted He Ran shook all over, his fists clenched tight as he cursed, rotten brat, you must be so damn cocky to think that being called the best in Western Lands means you're the king of the world. You think that that freak is someone you can toy with? Why do you think 4 areas joined hands to resist the central area yet were still at a disadvantage? Dan Qingshan only took a long breath and made up his mind. Exalted by Mei saw his determination and asked, Sheng, you're not impulsive and should know when to step back. Why? A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. Dan Qingshan held his head high as he sighed, what was it that I told Exalted before I left the Western Lands? That I had finally found my path. The two nodded, peace on this world. Yes, that is my path, that is her path. Dan Qingshan's eyes flashed, it was both of our hopes to create a better world. Ever since she died, I have gone crazy and I have fallen into despair. But then I thought to myself, rather than go mad from the pain and hatred, it'd be better to achieve this dream she wanted to see. That's why, for the past centuries, I have created such a place, a paradise between areas. Alas, nothing good lasts forever. My strength keeps all those petty thieves away, but I have been in constant conflict with the Central Area's Sword Star Empire's expansion, always wanting to wage war. I used to think that no matter how strong it was, my slice of heaven was insignificant, that they would at least talk with me on account of being a Genesis stage expert. Yet I did not expect that old freak to come straight for me and make a bet. If I lose, my land will be razed to the ground. Hundreds of years, gone. The Exalted picked up on his problem and said, and the old monster is coming for you still? Ha ha ha, that's right. Masters are the wisest. Dan Qingshan sighed, my place is only the size of a small empire. It has no riches and no grudge with anyone. How could happy normal people incite the wrath of others? How could they get the great Sword Star Empire to come after them? Unless that old bag of bones. Dan Qingshan's voice trailed off, switching to sending words instead. The Exalted sported an astonished look. Dan Qingshan sighed, the old guy has been in seclusion for hundreds of years and now that he came out and is far stronger, he wants to go big. The 4 lands are in danger and I hope Masters will be ready. With fortune, I saw that this time's Double Dragon gathering has some good seeds that might give the Western lands some hope. The Exalted nodded and sighed. But then Exalted He Ran raised an eyebrow, I just don't know if I should give you the sword or not anymore. Ha ha ha, yeah, it's quite the conundrum. Without the sword, I'll lose for sure. But if you do give it to me, maybe it will become the weapon by which the Western lands would run with blood. I'd be just as conflicted by this if I were Masters. Dan Qingshan chuckled, then his power exploded once more, since that's the case, just like the old agreement, strength will determine the victor. The Exalted nodded and said, strength it is. The two Exalted were showing off their strength as well, their dragon power tracing the lands and skies as it clashed with Dan Qingshan's fierce sword waves. With loud noises, the space began to shake from the impact, about to crack under their power. The audience watched agape. Are these the strongest experts in the world? This is outstanding. If they fight, the world might be ruined. This was what everyone thought. Even if exaggerated, they knew a saying. The top of mortal domain are like gods. Only Zhuo Fan eased a breath. Fight, don't talk. And don't solve the riddle of the sacred weapon. Though it was too soon to celebrate. It all came down to how they fought, and if they would settle this problem instead. So Zhuo Fan's eyes were fixed on the fight. Double Dragon Art, Double Dragon Emergence. The Exalted Double Dragons met their palms and shouted. Black and white powers came out as they spun on each other, just like a yin-yang symbol. The world was filled with a majestic power as it gathered around them in the form of a black and white roaring dragon. They then pushed out their palms and unleashed the dragon upon Dan Qingshen. The mighty force kept pushing him back. Dan Qingshen pointed his finger at the skies and a draconic roar sounded. A dragon revolved high above around his finger, as if it was climbing the heavens. The immense sword energy had reached its peak and gathered on his finger, forming an illusory atlas sword. The huge dragon roamed on this sword as it kept roaring. Under all of this immense power, the skies, the earth, everything was constantly shaking. Dragon cleaving art. Dan Qingshen shouted and brought his sword down upon the black and white dragon. The explosion from the impact was monumental. The skies dimmed, while the land around the sacred mine was leveled and barren. It went on for hundreds of miles, leaving in its wake an apocalypse. The crowd was overwhelmed. Just one blow from a Genesis stage expert unleashed such deadly power. Zhou Fan and Yi Lin's fight was astonishing in its own right, but not as frightening as this. They still had a way to go before they could burn the world to cinders. Everyone paled after seeing such might for the first time. No wonder Dan Qingshen could come and go in the Western Land's 10 sects as he wished. One snap of his fingers can erase a sect. Chapter 722, Misunderstanding. Chapter 722, Misunderstanding. Proofreader, Papatonks. The two great powers clashed and released constant explosions as they were in deadlock. Even so, the powers slowly weakened as time passed. With a crack, Dan Qingshen's sword soon vanished, while the exalted double dragon's black and white dragon crumbled away. Yet just as the attacks collapsed, a trace of power zipped between sides. A powerful dragon force hit Dan Qingshen in the chest, making him groan and forcing him back as he spat blood. Whoosh! While two sharp sword waves whistled into the exalted. Unable to react, the waves passed through the exalted's shoulders and left two red lines. As masters and disciple fought, it ended up with both sides suffering and neither getting the upper hand. The crowd was astounded. Dan Qingshen was the best in Western lands for a reason. Now, 2 against 1, and against his old masters, he still fought to a draw. This however, left the three feeling complicated. Exalted He Ran glanced at his shoulder and sighed, "Shen, just leave." Old-timer, exalted by Mei looked at them then at the sacred mine having lost its familiar feel and sighed. Dan Qingshen's eyes shook. He wiped his mouth and looked at the imprint in his chest. He could feel his innards close to boiling as he sighed. He and the exalted would only end up hurting each other. He could not defeat them, thus he could not take the sword. The exalted are still thinking of Western lands peace, ha ha ha. Dan Qingshen shook his head, giving a deep bow to the exalted double dragons before vanishing. Seeing him leave, exalted double dragon frowned, "Old-timer, will you just let him take the sword?" With no trace of it coming from the cave, that means he must have it. He made a big ruckus and called us out just to prove that he could take the sword openly. However, even if he loses, I don't think he'll leave the sword behind. Exalted He Ran shook his head and looked at his wound, 2 against 1 yet we're evenly matched. If he had taken out the sword, we'd have lost. Why didn't he? Exalted by Mei was worried, "Old-timer, you're right. We had planned on giving him the sword, but just like he said, that old freak from the central area is on the move. If we don't have the land's treasure, what comes, will. So what if we had it, won't the old freak have one as well?" Exalted He Ran shook his head, "When the old freak takes the central area's divine sword over to us, we'll still be of no match. It's better if we give it to Sheng, letting him fight for his beliefs. We'll have no regrets regardless of the outcome, since he's already stronger than us." Exalted by Mei sighed as he agreed, "Yeah, last time we didn't protect his beliefs and forced him to leave. At least now, we can make amends by letting him take the sword. We sealed the entrance at the heaven-reaching pavilion yet never believed he would come out in the open and take the sword like this. Ha ha ha, what does it have to do with that old freak from the central area anyway?" He just took it and left. Exalted by May seemed to have accepted this truth but then frowned, but how on earth did he sneak in? Did he really slip in under our noses? Ha ha ha, he took the sword, so what difference does it make? Exalted Hay Ran vanished. We need to get in touch with the other 3 lands experts. Get ready for that old freak. Exalted by May raised an eyebrow and nodded, vanishing as well. Unfortunately, neither Danqing nor Exalted Double Dragons figured out that it was just one giant misunderstanding. The Exalted Double Dragons thought they lost, so they left Danqing thinking he already had the sword. But Danqing always thought the Exalted knew he came here, so they took the sword on purpose, keeping it with them. Adding to that the draw, Exalted Hay Ran let him leave, making him think this was their way of driving him away. Since he couldn't beat him, he wouldn't get the sword. That was why he left sadly. Thus, the prized Atlas sword of the Western lands became an enigma. Danqing thought it was with the Exalted, while the Exalted thought he had it. They were both wrong though, as it was on Zhuofan all along. When the Exalted returned, they had the crowd disperse. Looking back at the screen, Zhuofan sighed. The misunderstanding took hold between them, and I am left getting away with it. Danqing was still oblivious he'd been made the scapegoat. Nothing but the lack of communication. Zhuofan sighed inside. Even though the 2 sides were master and disciple, since they broke it off, meeting again was a tense experience. The trio had to stick their pride out as well, so of course they ignored the trifles, leaving simple communication out of the equation. It was the perfect setup for a big misunderstanding, what Zhuofan had hoped all along. If Danqing had heard Exalted Hay Ran's words after he left, he would have asked more about the sword and Zhuofan's plan would have unraveled. While it wouldn't happen on the spot, the doubt in Danqing would grow and would find him out sooner or later. A shame this expert is too prideful, too nice. Not winning meant he had no right to get the sword. Danqing thought so and admitted defeat, leaving without a word. Ha ha ha, this way I can move about without a care. Zhuofan snickered inside as he stuck his chin out. The fiends found it odd. What's got you so perky all of a sudden? Being the top middle 3 sect isn't a cause for celebration. Ha ha ha, Zhuofan quirked an eyebrow. Ugh. Fiend Yang looked lost, but Exalted already announced our spot. How come you're happy only now? I just came to. Zhuofan's eyes darted all over as he smiled. Fiend Yang's eye twitched and rolled his eyes. This guy is being weird again. It's been said for an hour now and you're just reacting. There's no way he's happy over that. But if he doesn't want to say it, whatever. The guys shrugged, then shook their heads. Sometimes, Steward Zhuo was just plain weird and sometimes mysterious. They helped Zhuofan to get back to his room, planning on leaving once he recovered. They had completed the Double Dragon Gathering mission and would be rewarded once they got back to the sect. The fiends couldn't wait to break the news back home. Zhuofan, get better while I settle the details with others about our bragging speech once we get home, ha ha ha. Fiend Yang closed the door and laughed. Zhuofan merely smiled. The instant he was alone he heard someone, "Kid, you'd best leave as well in a few days. I find it hard to leave you even though we met for a few days." Zhuofan jerked in fright. He wiped his head around to see Danqing disappointed and drowning his sorrow with wine. Senior, what are you doing back here? Zhuofan's heart skipped a beat and gulped as he forced a smile. He didn't find out anything, right? Zhuofan was worried the old guy might have spotted something that gave him away. Danqing watched him through drunken eyes and sighed, I failed in the end. The Exalted were on guard and took the sword. I could not take it. That can't be. I saw Senior wounding the Exalted. Who else in Western lands but Senior is fit to have that sword? He gave him a thumbs up and good flattery while being on guard as to why Danqing was back here again. Chapter 723, Treasure Your People. Chapter 723, Treasure Your People. Proofreader, Papatonks. Dan Qingshan smiled through hazy eyes as he cursed, "Rotten brat, enough of your flattery. A loss or a draw is still a loss, thus not worthy of the sacred sword. This will make matters so much worse in the next fight. Senior has another battle?" Zhuo Fan probed. Dan Qingshan nodded, "The strongest in the central area, invincible sword. Lasting 10 moves would be a feat in itself. Senior is so strong, but can't handle 10 of his moves. Just how strong is he?" Zhuo Fan was astounded. Are the best in Western lands and the best in the central area so far apart? Dan Qingshan sighed and took a large gulp of wine. "Kid, you're too green, young and cocky. But remember this, there's always someone stronger out there. What can the best in Western lands amount to when in the central area? He wouldn't even be in the top 10 experts." "What?" Zhuo Fan was shocked, not because of Dan Qingshan's disparity compared to the central area, but of the gap between areas. Zhuo Fan had been a demonic emperor from the sacred domain. There was hardly any expert he hadn't seen. Yet the sharp difference in power on the same continent left him stunned. It was like a 3-year-old holding huge wealth only to have a towering thug for a neighbor. Who'd ever feel safe? He would have been robbed blind ages ago. But why is the central area so strong? Dan Qingshan saw through him and mocked. Of the entire continent, only the central area differs from the other 4. Do you know why? Zhuo Fan showed he didn't. It's their structure. Dan Qingshan turned serious. The 4 lands are governed by sects, with hundreds of empires serving them. This makes them a loose force. Since when it comes to waging war, it's still the empires that are stronger. When did you ever hear sects going to war? Zhuo Fan nodded as he contemplated. Dan Qingshan continued. Here's where the central area is different. There's an old monster there and a huge empire, Sword Star Empire. Invincible Sword, its ancestor, had founded the empire 10,000 years ago. He is not only strong, but even swallowed all the nations and sects around him until he achieved this form, an area ruled entirely by one empire. An entire area with just one empire? Zhuo Fan was shocked. Now he knew why the central area was so strong. With just a sole empire, its development was much sharper than many conflicting empires. The fact that it was a single empire was an amazing feat by itself. The other 4 lands weren't like this at all. While all wanted to achieve it, they had no one to take the lead. Take Western lands for example. Exalted double dragons were tough, but they were just cultivators and lacked vision and a calculating mind. Dan Qingshan gave him a long look and patted his shoulder. "Kid, I can tell you are a man of ambition, and even a trace of that old freak's nature. Lead your heroes, take your turf, but you best hurry it up and get stronger too. Central area is on the move. It will still take some time, but you're way too young. You're just out of time." "You mean that the central area's action has nothing to do with me?" Zhuo Fan started. Dan Qingshan smirked. That old freak took thousands of years to get his tiny empire to rule the entire central area. Now he's set his eyes on the world. Everyone is involved in this, you included. Even if you hide, can those girls hide as well? Can their empire, Tianyu, hide? Ha ha ha, the future of Western lands is yours. As a Western lands man, maybe the future will be your opponent's. But now, I hope you'll get ready and not regret what comes. Dan Qingshan stood up and bent his waist, about to leave. "I'd best be going now. I've wasted enough time on a kid. I just hope the Western lands youths will grow. It will be up to fate if you'll get over this calamity." Zhuo Fan's heart sank. He just wanted to focus on cultivating and get back to sacred domain. But Dan Qingshan just said that chaos would soon envelop the 5 lands. He didn't care much, since he was a lone wolf. No one would find him if he wanted to hide. It was another matter for the Luo clan. It would be hard to not get dragged into this mess. Maybe I should get some things ready, just in case. Then I'll leave in peace. Zhuo Fan was deep in thought as Dan Qingshan was fading away, yet he did say one last thing. By the way, kid, you better take care of that girl. Treasure your people. Oh please, I'm a demon. Why would I care about some girl? Knowing who Dan Qingchen was speaking of, Zhuo Fan blushed. Ha ha ha, what does being demonic or righteous have to do with it? You're just one man. Better not live to regret it later. Dan Qingchen vanished at long last. Zhuo Fan rolled his eyes, yet he now had more to worry about. It'll be hard to meet again after the Double Dragon gathering. Just that my path. Zhuo Fan closed his eyes. 3 days later, Zhuo Fan was in his room cultivating, his wounds halfway to being healed. It was around this time the sect teams were leaving. Demon Souls sect and Sword Gods sect had come to say goodbye to Zhuo Fan, wishing him a quick recovery. Zhuo Fan nodded with a smile. It looks to me we're practically relatives with these sections. It'll be up to Kuei Lang and the others now, on how they cherish their allies. He could now return to the Luo clan at ease. Zhuo Fan, Shuang'er and I are returning to Tianyu. When will you leave? Zhuo Fan opened his door to find that it was Yongning. Zhuo Fan frowned. I've yet to recover and I still need around 10 days before I leave at ease. At ease? Who is after you? Yongning started. Zhuo Fan smiled. I don't know since I've got many enemies. Better to be safe than sorry. The two girls nodded. Zhuo Fan did gain plenty of enemies this time and should be ready just in case. It wouldn't do to let the enemy make use of his wounded state. Then we will go on ahead. The girls waved with a smile, their eyes shining brightly. Zhuo Fan found it odd and pondered, aren't you two girls afraid of going back to Tianyu alone? Why don't you wait a few days and we'll go together? Really? Yongning perked up. Shuang'er pulled her clothes, then she came to and smiled, it's fine. Going back with Sister Qingcheng, we'll be talking about plenty of girl stuff. Like how to figure out your mind, win your favor, A blushing Shuang'er rushed to cover her mouth. Is Mystical Heaven sect leaving as well? Zhuo Fan frowned after hearing her. Dan Qingchen's words came to him and so he stood up to leave. The two hurried after him. They soon arrived at Mystical Heaven sect's place. The disciples were gathered around, ready to leave. Shui Ruahua noticed him and all the girls turned to Chu Qingcheng. Sister Qingcheng, he's here. Danner got Chu Qingcheng's attention. Shaking a little, Chu Qingcheng turned around to meet Zhuo Fan's cold eyes. She smiled and walked closer. How are you feeling? Much better. Why only ask now? Isn't it a little late? Ha ha ha, doesn't Steward Zhuo dislike chatter, always being alone? How come you're blaming me for not seeing you? Chu Qingcheng teased. Zhuo Fan looked deep into Chu Qingcheng's eyes. Give me half a year and I'll give you an answer for back then. Zhuo Fan then left, but Chu Qingcheng was stunned. She then smiled, her eyes filled with tears of joy. Turning around, she floated back to her team like a butterfly. The others were stumped at their icy teammate being lively and having a bright smile. What did that guy say? Sister Qingcheng, what's wrong? Danner hesitated. Chu Qingcheng beamed with joy. He said he'll give me an answer. He finally faltered. The others were lost. What does that mean? That was something only Chu Qingcheng knew. It was a question she asked Zhuo Fan a long time ago. Xian Xiaoyu looked on with cold eyes and clenched fists. Half a year, is it? Perfect. Chapter 724, Yun Clan Ancestral Home. Chapter 724, Yun Clan Ancestral Home. Proofreader, Papatonks. 10 days later, Zhuo Fan opened his door to take a deep breath of fresh air. He was in a better mood now that his wounds were healed. What awaited him outside was his team, the 9 disciples and 3 fiends of demon scheming sect. They had always been waiting for Zhuo Fan to get better and get home. These days, the other sects had already gone, leaving them behind. They came last and now they were leaving last. Though the mood was completely different. They were no longer tense, but jubilant. Zhuo Fan, you're the only one left. Can we go now? Fiend Yang grinned at Zhuo Fan. I've sent the sect Ascending Jade already, saying that we'll get back in 2 months, but, I have yet to give them the good news. Zhuo Fan raised an eyebrow and noticed Fiend Yang's rotten smile. You'll be making them sick with worry. Ha ha ha, that'll make things more interesting. While we risked our lives here, they'd just been casually waiting for the news. That's too easy for them. Fiend Yang winked at Zhuo Fan. You're going to leave anyway. You should use this chance to get back at those old fools now while you still can. Besides, once we sent them the great news, their towering fury would just fizzle out, right? The others laughed along. Zhuo Fan shrugged. Fine, I'm leaving anyway, so I'll just take this burden. Take it as my prank. Ha ha ha, wonderful. That's our great steward. Fiend Yang patted his shoulder and the others nodded with soft eyes. They knew their days with Zhuo Fan were running out. Zhuo Fan, are you leaving the demon scheming sect? A girl cried out. Zhuo Fan turned to see Yongning, who suddenly looked at him in shock. Where are you going? You better give us a clear location or we won't be able to find you. Zhuo Fan's eyes softened. You don't have to look for me. Once I finish reporting to the demon scheming sect, I'll be going home to Tianyu. Really? The girls cheered. Zhuo Fan nodded. Of course, why else did you think I asked you to wait? Forget Mystical Heaven sect and come with us. Once I finish over at the sect, we'll be going home together so you won't meet any trouble on the way. The girls bobbed their heads in elation. With Zhuo Fan back in the Luo clan, the girls would no longer have to suffer the bitter loneliness of being so far apart. But the fact that Chu Qingqing couldn't come along made them sad. No one else knew Zhuo Fan better than her. Even though they were love rivals, for her not to be around Zhuo Fan, they thought it was a great loss. Actually, Chu Qingqing's graceful stance had moved the girls. If they could all go together, it would be so much better. Now, let's set off. Zhuo Fan shouted, breaking their thoughts. Seeing them all go, the girls caught up. But then Shuang'er stalled and her eyes turned black as they reflected the starry sky. Her heart throbbed in her chest and she was gasping for breath. What's wrong, Shuang'er? Yongning started in worry. Zhuo Fan frowned, coming over. What happened? I don't know. My heart suddenly became frantic. I'm better now. Shuang'er looked lost as she shook her head. She felt a sudden danger, as if someone was coming for her. But then the feeling went away as quick as it came. Zhuo Fan looked around the area with a careful gaze before setting his mind at ease. It must be that Shuang'er is unwell. Once we return, she'll be getting better. And so, they left the Double Dragon Manor, unaware that Shuang'er's frantic heart was an omen of the future. Bam! In a forest, a rock covered in moss was pulverized. The sun's bright rays shone down deep in the dark and humid cave, long hidden from the world. 2 panting figures stood before it in joy. Second Prince, we finally found the Yun clan ancestral home. Ha ha ha, Amir, profound heaven expert, wearing all black, looked at the other in glee. Grinning, the youth nodded, clenching the yellow silk tight in his hand. So many years and now we finally found this accursed place. Big brother, Imperial Father, once I crack the Yun clan ancestral home's secret, I will find the best in Western lands and will return the lands to the Yuan clan. I will avenge you. And you, old third, dishonorable pig, your days are at an end. Ha ha ha. The youth cackled like mad, his eyes consumed by hatred. The guy in black sighed, nodding to himself. The lies Crown Prince weaved had the second prince seek revenge rather than instruct us. He was truly wise. Only hatred can make one seek revenge. These men were Crown Prince's men. They had no feud with the imperial family or Yuan Kong. After the Crown Prince's death, all of his loyal men were wanted across the nation. Scurrying like rats for so many years had worn the fight out of them. That went double for those who went with the second prince after the Yun clan ancestral home. After the bitter life they had been through the past years, it proved to be too much for most as they left one by one, leaving him all alone. Even so, even he had to beat a hasty retreat against some of the dangers they faced. Now, thanks to the Crown Prince beguiling Yuan Yong into exacting revenge, with his help, they finally arrived. This was just another proof of how hatred could drive a person to no end. If it was their mission, they would have long abandoned it. Only the second prince persevered, to restore the empire without fail. The guy in black even found himself admiring the second prince, though the clueless royalty was being played like a puppet on a string. Looking ahead, the guy in black took the lead. "Your Highness, I'll be scouting ahead. Stay behind me and be careful." "Thank you, Heiying." Second prince nodded. Smiley face. "The name is lit. Black Hawk." After years of toil, the second prince finally shed his overconfidence as an imperial prince, finally showing respect to the wise. The guy in black was touched. "Your Highness, you're too kind. It's my duty. You're too humble. Heiying, without you, I would have never reached here." Being close all their journey, the second prince sighed, "To find the Yun clan ancestral home, we've been through so much danger, and lost our way more times than I can count. We have even been trapped again and again. In the end, how many died, how many are left? Now I am alone, with you as my sole companion to share life and death with. From now on, you are my brother." The guy in black shook, touched to the core. He never imagined that the second prince they were ordered to use as a pawn would treat him so. He felt ashamed. He wanted to spill the beans about everything and not let his highness suffer for another's revenge. Everyone had a heart, even the crown prince's die-hard followers. Having spent so many years with the second prince, he had a change of heart. He couldn't bear to see his new master being hurt for following this stupid hatred. But that would mean the crown prince's final wish. "Your Highness," actually, Heiying was conflicted, frowning as he wanted to say something. In his moment of carelessness, he stepped onto something and fell. Plop! In the darkness, Heiying suddenly vanished and the second prince cried out, "Heiying!" What followed was him falling as well, and beneath him was nothing but utter blackness, a dark hole swallowing him whole. Chapter 725 Emperor Yun's Fragment. Chapter 725 Emperor Yun's Fragment. Proofreader, Papatonks. Aya! Two sharp yells broke the silent darkness, yet only their own ears could hear them. Second prince and Heiying then looked around, but beyond the eternal darkness there was only more black. "Heiying, can you fly out?" Second prince asked. He shook his head, filled with dread. "No, this cave is just weird, preventing me, a profound heaven expert, from flying. Yet we're still falling. Just when will we reach the end? We're finished. With such a deep cave, once we hit the ground, we'll be plastered. My life will return to the heavens." Second prince wailed, filled with resentment. He hadn't gotten revenge yet. How could he die just like that? Heiying sighed, biting back the words that threatened to come out. Though he would die having never fulfilled his revenge, it was a notch better to die for one's ideal. While telling him the truth would mean saying he was a pawn in the hand of a dead crown prince for years. Now that would be even more devastating. Letting him go in peace is better. He's been bitter enough these past years already. Heiying sighed, "Your Highness, you've spared no effort these years. Your Highness and Crown Prince know your devotion and will rest in the underworld." How can he rest? The nation isn't a nation, Yuan clan's lands are in the hands of another and I couldn't do anything. Imperial father, big brother, they'll never know rest. Second prince started shedding tears. "It's because I'm too weak to get back the ancestors' lands. It's I who failed in earning imperial father and big brother's deep love." Second prince sobbed, making Heiying shake his head as he waited to meet his doom. This was the only way to repay his two masters' care. However, there was an odd sound and the two suddenly slowed down before finding themselves afloat in pitch blackness. The two were stunned and looked around. I am one of the 10 ancient emperors, Emperor Yun's remnant, sent by her to guard my clan. Are you the sons of my clan, coming to pay your respects? A deafening voice rocked their ears, threatening to blow their eardrums. A white image hundreds of meters wide appeared. He looked like an aged immortal, with power and wisdom. He had silvery flowing hair, a white beard, and a deep and profound aura. The entire void was filled with glittering stars the next second, flowing in a mystical pattern. The two stared agape at the display. Who's he? He's like a god walking on this world, holding everything in his palm. He can't just be a damn human. Skipping over Zhuofan, have they ever seen someone so awesome anywhere on this continent? Even Dan Qingshan couldn't hold a candle to this guy. Yun clan's ancestral home hid such an astonishing expert. I can't frickin' believe it. Emperor Yun frowned. If you are my descendants, you may take refuge with me from any difficulty. If not, trespassers shall be forever buried in my clan's forbidden land to atone for your crimes. What? The two cried out. Only Yun clansmen could come here, if they wanted to live. The two were frantic, with the second prince having no shame as he said, Ancestor, I'm from the Yun clan. I'm Yun Yong. He Ying's face twitched and he sighed. This guy changes tunes too fast. He even renounced his name. Then again, being chased for so many years, he lost his arrogance as a prince. All he ever cares about is survival, even using a sharp tongue. Ancestor, I'm also from the Yun clan. I'm Yun Ying. He Ying cupped his hands. Emperor Yun mocked, it doesn't matter if you say you are. I will be the judge of that. Emperor Yun's eyes shot prismatic lights as it scanned the two. Humph, my Yun clan have mystic eyes that can read the heavens. Yours are normal and you think you can pretend to be of my clan? After the scan was over, Emperor Yun snorted, common fools, die for trespassing in the Yun clan's forbidden grounds. The pitch-black world began to burn, as stars started falling on the two. Thousands of city-wide bright lights were coming down on them at full force. With so many coming to plaster them, there was no way two puny profound heaven experts could take it, not when even ethereal stage experts would have a hard time. The two panicked in fear. Fortunately, the thick and impenetrable skin second prince grew over these torturous years in search for revenge was finally put to good use. Wait, we are just Yun clan's average clansmen. Only the clan head has awakened those eyes. Humph, wrong. Not just the Yun clan head is able to awaken them. Only a Yun clansman who does is a true Yun clansman. Emperor Yun spat, my blood allows the awakening of a single person in every generation of my clan. That is my successor. Everyone else, even if from the Yun clan, is a stranger. Don't you know that only the clan head can come here? Even as Yun clansmen, you only came to your deaths. Emperor Yun finished just as the incoming starfall was about to pulverize the two home invaders. Second prince gnashed his teeth and his eyes flashed. He took out Yun Xuanji's eye and said, we've come out of clan head's final wish. This is our proof. Whoosh! The stars halted and soon vanished. He Ying closed his eyes and shivered. Second prince's hands shook as well, waiting to be erased from this world. However, death did not come. He watched as a pair of eyes stared down at the orb in his hand. It's the mystic eye of my Yun clan. But since it's just proof, I can only agree to one request. One. Startled, the two were jubilant. They turned it all around. Emperor Yun switched from being their greatest enemy to their strongest backer. That was just too sudden. Didn't he doubt where this eye came from? Though it worked in their favor. Why look for some Dan Qingshan when we have this guy to raise the world? So the second prince bowed and whined, Ancestor, my empire has been taken by an evil spawn. I hope Ancestor will set things right. Help you restore the nation. Emperor Yun quirked an eyebrow. Second prince bobbed his head and the emperor shook his, denied. Why? Didn't you say you'll agree to one request? With your power, this will be as easy as breathing. Second prince complained. Emperor Yun said, I told you, I am Emperor Yun's remnant left by her to protect our clan and show it the path forward. I cannot leave, thus, I cannot help you. What can you do, then? Second prince was annoyed and shouted. He Ying jerked and hurriedly pulled his hand. Master, don't get carried away. He can't leave, but we're here stuck with him. He's the boss and you better not anger him. It'll be so easy to kill us like squashing bugs. Second prince finally came to his senses and cupped his hands. Forgive me, ancestor, I got carried away. I just want to know how you could help us. Read the heavens and show you the way. Ask your questions and I shall answer all I can. Emperor Yun's heavy words fell. Chapter 726, Back to the Sect. Chapter 726, Back to the Sect. Proofreader, Papatonks. He Ying's eyes lit up and held his hand out, pointing with a trembling finger at the second prince's ring. Catching his drift, the second prince showed a painting, the lands of our nation. Second prince shouted, Ancestor, please tell me where the best in western lands, Dan Qingshen, is. Can I find him? Emperor Yun's eyes shifted and became like the starry sky. The stars around him were on the move as well, releasing their aura and making the two home invaders step back in fright. Dan Qingshen is in the central area. You will find him in the imperial capital of the Sword Star Empire. He will fulfill your wish. The stars halted and silence once again reigned after Emperor Yun spoke gravely. But there was now doubt in his eyes, something the two below were blind to. Second prince cheered, Ancestor, is it true? Don't call me Ancestor. I have read the heavens and know you're not Yun clansman. I also know everything that your clan did. But I am but Emperor Yun's remnant and have to follow the rules. Since you brought the Yun clan's mystic eye, I have shown you the way. Emperor Yun's flat tone came. Second prince's heart sank, and he was getting nervous. He only breathed easier seeing him still calm. Since he was a remnant, he had no feelings. If Emperor Yun was here, he'd be watching their entrails dripping down the walls after swatting them for trying to con him. Not that his little mind could figure that one out, thinking this big shot was nagging. So he bowed and braced himself, Senior, when will I be able to meet Dan Qingshen? That's your second question that I won't answer. You better leave. Eyeing them with a flat look, Emperor Yun flicked his wrist. A gale formed and the two were blown away and were now kissing the ground in the most unpleasant way. When they finally woke up, they were shocked. Before them was a lofty mountain, with a peak hiding behind the clouds and snow high on its sides. He Ying cried, Your Highness, how did we get here? How are we at the foot of the mountain? We've been climbing. For 3 whole years. Second prince sighed. 3 years of toil as we worked our way through dangers and lost trails. 1,000 died, 1,000 left, leaving only us to carry on. I can't believe that Emperor Yun would take us back down with a flick of his wrist. He's beyond monstrous. He Ying nodded, never imagining one of the 4 pillars had such a freakish backer. If this freak could move, the world would be his oyster. Sparing one last long look at the snowy peak, He Ying sighed, so many years, so many deaths. All but for a few words from an old man. This result, ha ha ha. That's more than enough. We now have a way to get revenge. Second prince shouted as he strutted towards the central area, as the Yun clan's ancestor, his prediction must be right. We finally found Dan Qingshen and a way to regain our nation. Zhua Fan, Luo clan, and the old third, you will all pay for stealing our land, ha ha ha. Second prince could practically see the glory of victory and taste it. He Ying stared at him and followed in silence. Never mind. If revenge is all that's driving him, let him have it. Maybe when he sits on the throne, it won't be too late to tell him. Maybe he'll thank the crown prince then for this revenge. That was how these 2 loners walked forward to restore their nation. Unaware as they left that Emperor Yun was still hovering in that black space, the doubt in his eyes only increasing. That's odd. His goal is to get revenge on the Luo clan, Zhuofan and his third brother. But the Luo clan and his brother's destiny are clear, only Zhuofan's fate is unreadable. Can it be that he lives outside fate? That will make him a huge variable. Emperor Yun sighed and vanished, letting the darkness consume everything in this domain. 2 months later, Zhuofan's team was back before their sect at long last. Xia Wuyue and the elders were waiting for ages. Ha ha ha, Wuyue, what a grand welcome I see. Fiend Yang laughed, as if basking in their adoration. Yet Xia Wuyue glared back instead. He flashed in his face and stomped. Bam! The resounding boom sent Fiend Yang flying like a cannonball. The ball of flesh sped through the air and smacked into a cliff, leaving a man-shaped hole in it. The disciples ready to celebrate with their elders stood stock still. Did we do something wrong? Why is the sect leader so pissed? Giving them a glare, he was filled with bloodthirst watching the cliff tumble down. Fiend Yang came out of the rubble, barking, "For God's sake! Are you a sect leader or a lunatic? We've risked our lives in the Double Dragon manor for the sect's glory, and this how you repay me? What did I ever do to you? You got the nerve to ask?" Xia Wuyue snorted, 2 months ago you sent me a sending jade, telling me that you'll be back in 2 months, not giving me any details as to what happened. You got some nerve, making me unable to sit still all this time. You damn fatso deserve more than just a light kick. The others chuckled. Ah, so that's why, it's because of the sending jade that sect leader is pissed. He should know what happened at the Double Dragon gathering yet was kept in suspense all this time. Fiend Yang grinned, "Oh. Did I forget to mention it? Bullshit, how can you forget something so big? Even if you forget to write your will, you can never forget this." Xia Wuyue snorted, "Talk. Did we lose so much that we got last place in the lower 3 sects? Is that why you didn't say anything?" Yu Ling and the others giggled. They couldn't believe their sect leader had so little faith in them. He's sure to get the shock of his life. The disciples snickered. Fiend Yang was also grinning, though he was still mincing words. "What do you think, Wuyue?" "Think your ass." Xia Wuyue glared, then turned to Zhuofan. But the guy walked into the sect with some 2 girls. Shouting for 2 laborers, Zhuofan pointed at the girls and said, "Settle them in." "Yes, Steward Zhua." The 2 bowed. Zhuofan was yet to rule over the demon-scheming sect, but his word was law in the labor office, above even the elders. The laborers got down to following his orders despite there being a throng of elders and venerables around, even the sect leader on top. Xia Wuyue was outraged. "Zhuofan, who said you can bring some foreign girls into the sect? That's against the rules. Just coming and going. Didn't you agree to let him go after all the fighting?" Fiend Yang held his shoulder and smiled. "Besides, the kid got most of the credit at Double Dragon gathering. Letting him do whatever before leaving ain't much." Xia Wuyue was now interested and turned to face him. "How did it go? What do you think?" Fiend Yang quirked an eyebrow, starting the posturing all over again. Xia Wuyue's face twitched and he clenched his fists as a scorching fire burned in his heart, a volcano ready to pop. Chapter 727, Sect Celebration. Chapter 727, Sect Celebration. Proofreader, Papatonks. Xia Wuyue squinted and the anger in his eyes burned hotter. Fatty Yang, better give me that explanation right now or so help me, I'll make you suffer if you keep showing off, regardless of our friendship." Easy, I'll tell you for sure, ha ha ha." Fiend Yang smiled and whispered in Xia Wuyue's ear, "Actually, we." "What?" Xia Wuyue was bug-eyed, "Say that again." "Ha ha ha, I knew you'd make that face. No one would believe our ever-cold demon-scheming sect leader Xia lost his cool." Laughing it up, Fiend Yang turned to the oldies, shouting, I'm saying that at the Double Dragon Gathering, we became the top middle 3 sect and brought home 10,000 sacred stones. Are you for real? The oldies were frozen in place, sporting a dumb and incredulous look as they looked at the disciples. The demon scheming sect was but a lower 3 sect. How the hell did it get to being the top middle 3 sect? This is insane. Venerable Shur, the leader of the inner sect's oldies, was just as stumped. Never in their wildest dreams would they have thought this time's team would come back with any success. Yet they didn't feel like celebrating, feeling downcast instead. The Double Dragon Gathering team was made of elite labor office's disciples. It had nothing to do with the inner sect. That meant the labor office would become more valuable and more important now. He bet Xia Wuyue would soon use this credit to announce the labor office would receive all resources while his inner sect would crumble. Venerable Shur, one elder spoke with worry. Venerable Shur said nothing as his eyes flashed with a calculative glimmer. No matter, there's fortune in disaster. We still have to play along. However, I must say that Zhuofan is incredible. If he weren't the sect leader's man, I would actually admire him, ha ha ha. Glancing at the calm Zhuofan, Venerable Shur had a crafty smile. The others looked lost. Why is Venerable Shur praising the enemy when the sect leader is about to throw the inner sect to the curb? Xia Wuyue was out of it for a couple of minutes after Fiend Yang's news. When he came to at long last, he glared and smiled as he grabbed his fat arm. Fatty Yang, is that true? You're not fooling around, are you? Who would joke about something so huge? Fiend Yang grinned as he cursed. Besides, your bug-eyed look at our strong disciples isn't becoming of a top middle 3 sect. Fiend Yang came to the disciples and put on a smug look. As if they got so strong all because of his dedicated training. Fiend Yin and Fiend Gue shook their heads. Kui Lang's side stuck out their chests, of course, releasing their aura and pride. The others' faces twitched. They could not believe it as they watched the returned disciples with eyes as wide as saucers. They didn't look at it at first, but now they saw it. Just how long has it been? These little guys' strength is unrecognizable. Except for 3 in the 6th layer radiant stage, the other 9 were in the ethereal stage. Just what the hell brought on this miracle? Venerable Qi and Bai were ecstatic. 4 of those 6 were related to them. Bai Lian and Qi Changlong were their grandchildren while Yu Ling and Kui Lang were their disciples. In one move, they had 4 extra ethereal stage experts under them. That was sure to make them look good as hell. They were also qualified to work for his faction, consolidating their position. The labor office's oldies looked at these bright disciples with beaming smiles. Only the inner sect faction stood there glum from envy and embarrassment. This kind of credit never happened before, yet it didn't have a damn thing to do with them. What none noticed was a pair of eyes from Venerable Shur's faction that never looked away from Guihu. It was Grand Elder. I was right in making you enter the labor office. You're now far sharper than before. Grand Elder smiled in pride. Hold on, let's all calm down first. As the crowd became noisier, Fiend Yang started shouting. Everyone settled down and spoke seriously. People, our success at the Double Dragon Gathering, the great improvement of our disciples, are all due to one man. Labor Office's Steward, Zhuofan. Roar! The oldies went wild again, looking at Zhuofan in veneration. Even the angry Xia Wuyue was now filled with joy. He made the best move of his life when he got this kid to the sect. For thousands of years and tens of sect leaders, finally, in his lifetime, the demon scheming sect had become the head middle 3 sect. This merit was monumental. Even the ever-cold Xia Wuyue started smiling. Although, in the middle of their excitement, Fiend Yang's tune changed. You should also know that desperate times call for desperate measures. These kids got to improve so much so fast through many deadly perils. Those that hadn't succeeded, well, you can tell what happened to them. Ugh! The rest now realized Fiend Yang's words. To get these guys to grow up fast, Zhuofan used life and death to train them. Brave the danger and one would become a worldly expert. Fail and you'd be nothing but bones on the road. But weren't those casualties the babies of some oldies? This hatred was falling right on Zhuofan. Fiend Yang said this to show Zhuofan's feats. Without him training the other disciples, they wouldn't have gotten their flashy new rank. So he was also telling the oldies not to look for revenge. Your disciples died for the sect. However, while they got his meaning, some were still hit hard by the loss of their precious disciples. Xie Wuye turned heavy and said, before setting off, I had appointed Zhuofan as my representative, bearing my power. His word was my word. If you're looking for revenge, blame me. I have said it already, Double Dragon Gathering is of grave importance to the sect, not a place where you can butt in to gain some perks. They deserved their fate. But since the success has been so amazing, I'll be generous even to them for all their efforts. Sect leader is brilliant. Fiend Yang shouted and clapped. The oldies' grief had now become a sacrifice to the sect, though all here knew even alive, those disciples couldn't do a thing at the gathering. Xia Wuye said this to be fair. As for being generous, how could one be to a dead guy? That benefit would be given to their masters, no? That is, a token to soothe their hard feelings. The oldies were silent. Wasn't it obvious for one to give his life to the sect? So they bowed in respect. Sect leader is brilliant. Zhuofan's pesky troubles were now washed away by Fiend Yang's timely intervention. It was the least he could do for Zhuofan. He knew the grudges of demonic cultivators. Once he left the sect, he had no one to protect him from those oldies' revenge. So simmering down those flames of hatred before he left was perfect. Zhuofan got his meaning but didn't care. He only chuckled at Fiend Yang, as thanks for his efforts. Less trouble is always better. We'll be holding a sect celebration for having become a middle 3 sect, even the top one. We'll hold a feast for 3 days straight. Xie Wuye saw that all was settled and got excited as he laughed. The rest cheered. Xie Wuye was startled to see Zhuofan outside his door and frowned. Zhuofan, you've done great in the Double Dragon Gathering. What are you doing here instead of celebrating? Visiting a miser. He took a seat before him like he owned the place and Zhuofan pointed at the ring. 10,000 sacred stones has you looking so dumb? Xie Wuye was ticked off. Just 10,000? Ha ha ha, you're talking as if you got more, just 2,000. You heard that? Fiend Yang likes to talk too much, so I had Fiend Yin report instead. Xie Wuye sighed and nodded. You're really something, kid, to get even the exalted to look at you, even making a special rank just for you and getting 2,000 sacred stones. Even if I don't officially make you the next sect leader successor, the entire sect would not sit still until they know it's you who will be sitting in my chair. Xie Wuye stared hard at Zhuofan, but he had no reaction. Xie Wuye, we talked about this. After the Double Dragon Gathering, our deal is done. Going home. Xie Wuye's brow shook, his heart unsettled as he showed a sneaky smile. To what, the Luo clan? You mean to tell me Demon Scheming sect can't compare to a measly mortal clan? Ha ha ha, having come back with so much merit, you will be the next sect leader after me. With the sacred stones, in a century, we'll become a true middle 3 sect. A tiny mortal clan would mean even less then. You will be king here. Now you're telling me being stuck as a butler for the Luo clan is way better? Zhuofan gave him a long look. Where I like to go, is my business. No one can change that. You better not break your word, sect leader Xie. Xie Wuye said nothing, but his sharp eyes stabbed into him like daggers. But then he shrugged. Actually, letting you stay was thinking of your future. After being on Double Dragon Manor's list, you'd be going even higher. You might even be at the top of the Western lands. But since you're set on leaving, I won't stop you. Xie Wuye waved him off, looking disappointed as he sighed. People always work to better themselves. Yet I never saw someone so complacent like you. Zhuo Fan, you'll be sure to regret it. That's none of your concern. Zhuo Fan rolled his eyes and walked out. Just as he left, Xie Weiyue muttered to himself, ha ha ha, he left at last. The sect isn't big enough for the both of us. Sigh, Zhuo Fan, if you had shown the slightest interest in my position, I. Xie Weiyue's eyes flashed with bloodthirst. Back at the feast, Zhuo Fan looked at the girls, get ready, we'll leave right after the feast. So soon? Kui Lang and the others were stunned. Zhuo Fan nodded. Xie Weiyue was good at covering up his intent, but he was more than familiar with that kind of baiting. He was paying attention to every last word Xie Weiyue said and every meaning they had told him to leave, to not aim for the sect leader's position. He believed that if he showed the slightest interest in the chair, Xie Weiyue would have went for the kill. He didn't know Xie Weiyue's cultivation, and since this was the demon scheming sect, Xie Weiyue ruled. Once a fight broke out, Zhuo Fan was at a disadvantage. So he honored his own word and left. As for Elder Yuan, Zhuo Fan frowned, Kui Lang, though I'm leaving and no longer of the demon scheming sect, I hope you can do something for me. Just say the word, Steward Zhua. Kui Lang cupped his hands. When Elder Yuan returns, stall him, then send me a jade slip. I'll be here before you know it. No problem, Steward Zhua. Kui Lang nodded. Zhuo Fan stood up and left with the girls. But just then, a laborer rushed into the main hall. Halt, this is the Elder's feast. Disciples can't enter. One attendant barred his way. The guy shouted, I've come to give a message to Steward Zhua. Elder Yuan is back. Zhuo Fan shook and frowned, then he brightened up. Just in time. Elder Yuan continued, at the birth of the world, the righteous and demonic paths came to be. As the human heart has desire, it leads to two different ways to cultivate. The righteous path abolishes desire, to be one with the world, unshackled by any greed. While the demonic path is the opposite, experiencing endless desire through which to break the mortal coil and reach the Tao. In other words, righteous means to be above everything, while demonic implies sinking into it. This shows that the paths are neither good nor evil, but once you enter them, it's easy for desires to be born and end up at their mercy. This is a demon. By overcoming it, you reach Tao. So the demonic path means passing through the demon state to reach Tao. What we want to do in the end is to attain Tao. Because it's easy to be constantly tempted along our cultivation journey, we end up being demonic and earn such a bad name. But all those that achieved success in the demonic path are not demons, and certainly won't be like those 4 scheming demons, pillaging and killing at a whim. Because they had gone beyond in their path and have come closer to Tao. Zhuo Fan nodded as he understood it. He used to think the demonic path implied selfishness, but now he saw it was just prejudice. By becoming a demon and rising above greed could one reach the Tao. Zhuo Fan finally saw the path wide open before him. As for love, it's nothing by itself, but it's the most tempting desire from which escape is nigh impossible. Many demonic cultivators have been unable to distinguish love from desire and sink further and further, moving away from the Tao. That is why demonic cultivators are so ruthless when it comes to love, not getting anywhere near it. This is because it's hard for anyone to come back from it. To righteous cultivators, this is easier. They walk the path of abandoning all desire, neutralizing the desire and keeping them safe. Elder Yuan continued, but you must understand, nothing ventured, nothing gained. The world is cruel but also fair. The demonic path is filled with more pain than the righteous path, so when all these trials are overcome, the demonic cultivator would attain a higher level than a righteous cultivator. Zhuo Fan nodded, in other words, love isn't scary, as long as I don't let it take me. Ha ha ha, that's besides the point right now, since you're already in it. Elder Yuan pointed at his heart. Do you know what a demonic cultivator's greatest heart demon is? Regret. Since you're already taken by love, if you don't settle it, it will turn into regret and will be much worse. As to how you are to escape the maelstrom of love, that will be up to you alone. That's why I said that it is for advanced players only. A child has no place toying with it. But I believe you're the exception. I hope that even if you are taken over by love, you will be able to see your path, and not be like Dan Qingxin, almost collapsing because of it, consumed by revenge. Though he's also amazing, getting back on his path in the end, ha ha ha. Taking a deep breath, Zhuofan nodded and bowed. Thank you for everything, Elder Yuan. I know what to do now. I can finally give her an answer. I feel so much better. Ha ha ha, I'm only speaking what your heart tells you. It might not be the truth. While there's a demonic and righteous path, the world has thousands of other trails. Who is to say that yours is the right one? That's why it's all up to you to do what you feel is right. Elder Yuan spoke heavily. Steward Zhua, your heart already had an answer but was conflicted under the traditional beliefs. That's why you came to me. But the closer you are to Tao, the fewer people there are understanding it. There will come a time when no one can explain it to you. You will only have yourself to believe in. My past experiences might not be the right path. You will know it when you walk your own road. Star-led, Zhuofan bowed again and said, I will take it to heart. Zhuofan left afterward. His next goal was Mystical Heaven Sect. Seeing his light steps, Elder Yuan nodded and sighed. The child has his own road, but why do you keep losing yours, Wu Yue? Chapter 730, Help. Chapter 730, Help. Proofreader, Papatonks. Master, is it really impossible? Damn miscreant, have you already forgotten that pain? Didn't that girl hurt you enough? No matter how much merit you've done for the sect, rules are rules. Sect leader won't budge in this matter, so just give it a rest. And don't even think about going to him with this, or you'll only make it worse. That time, even I can't save you. Zhuofan's heart was free, unshackled and light. He felt so carefree as he walked, eager to get to the Mystical Heaven Sect. But then his ear picked up two familiar voices that caught his attention, Venerable Qi and Kuei Lang. Even puzzled, Zhuofan would hardly ever butt in someone's problems, but today he was in such a good mood, he walked right over. What's wrong? Why are master and disciple arguing? Oh, Steward Zhua. Kuei Lang immediately bowed and Venerable Qi nodded in respect. This brat only knows how to cause trouble. He got a bit of merit and it got to his head. He even forgot the last transgression that got him kicked into the labor office. Kuei Lang looked ashamed and lowered his head. Zhuofan raised an eyebrow. Just what happened? Can I hear it? Kuei Lang hesitated before giving Zhuofan a glance. Steward Zhua, you know already. It's my girl. Oh, because of you she's been detained in the Mystical Heaven Sect? That's why Xian Xiaoyu threatened you in the Double Dragon Gathering, Zhuofan exclaimed. Venerable Qi's eyelid twitched and he glared at Kuei Lang. You actually gave up for an enemy in the Double Dragon Gathering? This is absurd. If the sect leader finds out, you'd be lucky to keep your life. Sigh, damn vixens. Venerable Qi stomped in anger. Zhuofan waved his hand with a smile. Venerable Qi, there's no need for anger. Only the three of us know this. Besides, I'm also about to leave anyway. Thank you so much, Steward Zhua. Venerable Qi gave a deep bow then glared at Kuei Lang, making him feel even more guilty. However, he still clung to one last thread of hope. Didn't we earn a great merit? Sect leader is cheerful as well. I think using this chance to ask him to use the demon scheming sect's glorious name to ask the Mystical Heaven sect to get my girl back. Bullshit. Venerable Qi snapped, the demon scheming sect is against fraternizing. And you even expect he'd lower himself to the Mystical Heaven sect for a mere disciple like you? We'd be lucky if the Mystical Heaven sect wouldn't take advantage of our weakness and just let her go. But even so, our sect would have lost its name because of it. Venerable Qi's torrent of words smashed into Kuei Lang's ears, causing him to lose hope. And yet, he still looked at Zhuo Fan with a fixed gaze. His master couldn't help him, so now it was up to Zhuo Fan if he was willing to pass it on to the sect leader. Even if a mere disciple, Zhuo Fan was the sect leader's confidant. Having gotten such a glorious win at the Double Dragon Gathering, putting the sect in the top middle 3 sects, the sect leader might hear him out when not even elders or venerables could get his ear. Zhuo Fan frowned, rubbing his chin. Your master's right. Let it go, or you'll only make it worse. Xia Wuiyue doesn't care about anyone. He won't help you at all, in fact, he would fly into a rage and punish you. You're better off not mentioning it. Venerable Qi nodded like it was obvious, glaring at his disciple. See that, even Steward Zhuo said it. Kuei Lang's face fell in despair. Although Zhuo Fan switched topics with a crafty smile, getting someone out isn't necessarily done using the sect's name. I'm just about to go to Mystical Heaven's sect and fetch someone. You can just come along. Ugh! The two gave him dumb looks. Then Venerable Qi gasped, Steward Zhuo. Ha ha ha, if I won't do it, who else will? Zhuo Fan smiled as he looked above. I've been absorbed with the demonic path for years and have discovered many truths. That should make me a somewhat advanced player. No matter how deep you sink into the sea of desire, I shall not fear, ha ha ha. The two looked lost at him. Zhuo Fan turned to Kuei Lang and said, what are you staring at? Come on, Mystical Heaven's sect had been a lower 3 sect for all these years and shouldn't have many sacred stones. I'll use the 2,000 on me to smash their face in and get those girls. One for you and one for me. Zhuo Fan started walking towards the gate. Kuei Lang came out of it at some point and rushed after him. Steward Zhuo, why you're really going to give your sacred stones for my girl? Of course. Sacred stones are just invaluable things compared to people. Steward Zhuo, you're truly kind. I'll never forget this for as long as I live. No matter what happens, I will do anything you ask. Lighten up. We're just 2 guys bearing the same trouble. Though, there may be a use of you yet. Who knows, ha ha ha. Zhuo Fan and Kuei Lang chuckled in the distance, leaving Venerable Qi dumbstruck. 2,000 sacred stones over 2 girls. This is such a waste. Their sect had at most 1,000 of those glittering baubles that had to last the sect for centuries. Yet now, this Steward Zhuo was going to squander twice that on some broads. Venerable Qi looked ahead as his face twitched and heart bled. No matter how loaded you are, you can't just throw it all away. Sigh, how can a nouveau riche understand the pain of poverty? Venerable Qi shook his head, unable to make sense of Zhuo Fan's actions, but also envious and admired him. Zhuo Fan was spending so much for his girl and was going to do the same for Kuei Lang. Such a nice boss was a rarity in this world. It's Kuei Lang's fortune to land such a boss. While theirs, Xia Wuiyue was stingy to the core, fighting for every scrap. He had no idea, though, that those 2,000 rocks were a drop in a bucket for Zhuo Fan while a life fortune to Xia Wuiyue. Putting them side by side, one could see how one spent. Zhuo Fan, can we go now? At the demon scheming sect's entrance, Shuang'er and Yongning were waiting for him. Yongning asked, Brother Kuei Lang, you're coming along? Kuei Lang had a bright smile, but it was Zhuo Fan who said, no, he will only accompany us to Mystical Heaven's sect. Mystical Heaven's sect? We're going to get Qingcheng and then go home together. Zhuo Fan had a wide smile on his face. The girls' hearts skipped a beat but then smiled. Shuang'er found Zhuo Fan's look even more enchanting. No wonder I found your attitude off. You're no longer as depressed as before. So you have your answer for Sister Qingcheng. I've dragged out this question for far too long, Zhuo Fan sighed. The girls nodded, finally able to rest their intentions and be happy for him. The 4 were now on the road to Mystical Heaven's sect. Since Zhuo Fan said he'd answer Chu Qingcheng half a year later, they were in no rush. In fact, Zhuo Fan was actually dragging his feet, as if nervous. This question had been on hold for almost a decade. How would he answer? How would she react? How would I react? These were all pressing questions to Zhuo Fan. Suddenly, Zhuo Fan felt as if he was like a tense bride before her wedding. The girls giggled. The high and mighty Steward Zhuo box when it comes to talking about relationships. The team had gone like this for a month, yet they were only a third of the way to Mystical Heaven's sect. Even Schwanger was starting to dislike this and pouted, "We're not here to sightsee. If we go any slower, you'll miss your due date with Sister Qingcheng." Really? Zhuo Fan let out a dry laugh, but how am I to answer her? All these years I've been so cold. Whoosh! A red figure came smashing down 100 meters from them, kicking up a cloud of dust. The group was stunned to see Mystical Heaven sect's Danner, Chu Qingcheng's junior sister. As he was going to Chu Qingcheng, Zhuo Fan had to mind her junior sister, no? So he rushed over to help her up. "Danner, what's wrong? What happened?" "Zhuo Fan." Danner looked in joy, then said, "Why you have to save Sister Qingcheng?" Chapter 731, Qingcheng's Danger. Chapter 731, Qingcheng's Danger. Proofreader, Papatonks. What happened to Qingcheng? Zhuo Fan hurriedly shook Danner's frail body. Panting, Danner teared up, and Sister Ruohua, Qing'er, they. Zhuo Fan hardened, "I don't care about them. Tell me now, what happened to Qingcheng?" Zhuo Fan was sweating as he stared down Danner until she was scared. "Steward Zhuo, let her speak. You're scaring the poor child." Kui Lang spoke and said to Danner, "Little girl, tell us what happened. We'll definitely help." Danner looked at them and finally said, "Sect leader wanted us 5 sisters to cure the young master's illness." What? Zhuo Fan's face fell and gnashed his teeth. I knew the punk was born a cripple with lacking elements, but now I see even his brain is screwed on wrong. He dares to touch my girl. Sensing the seething hatred seeping from Zhuo Fan, Danner was in shock from fear. Yet for some reason, his towering bloodthirst gave her a sense of safety. Kui Lang patted Zhuo Fan's shoulder to cool him down. "Just what happened exactly? Please tell us everything so we can save them." "Well." Double Dragon Gathering nodded and began, "After the Double Dragon Gathering, we got back to the sect. The day barely ended and some elders came to us in the dead of night to seal some of my sister's cultivation, then put them in a room with the sect leader and the young master. That was when we knew that the 4-element cycle array was all to heal the young master's illness for lacking elements. The only reason we went to Double Dragon Gathering was to test the limits of the 4-element cycle array, whether it fit the bill. Only in a life and death battle would the power of this array be brought out. The elder found it eligible, so they took our sisters to cure the young master." Schwanger hurriedly asked, "Cure how?" "The 4-element cycle array relies on maidens with elemental constitutions to draw out their power and purify the young master's body to rebuild his elemental balance." Finally. Danner blushed as she spoke in a lower tone, "Using a maiden's blood to draw out the 5 elements and completely cure the young master." Bam! Zhuo Fan's hand pulverized a rock nearby. In other words, the perverted young master wants Qingcheng's body? Not just that. Wiping her tears, Danner sobbed, "It would be fine if it were just curing young master, since we were dedicated to this and we've also seen young master grow up. Bearing some sacrifices to save him was acceptable to us, but I never thought." "What?" they all asked. Danner's sobbing grew louder. "Young master actually sucked out all of Sister Qing'er's spirit and soul. He was so scary." Qing'er became a dried husk and even sect leader looked shocked. This is a demonic art of stealing yin to further yang. The punk has turned demonic. Zhuo Fan's brow shook, his teeth clenched. "I fear that ever since that little town he's been like this, ever since Yan Imo drew him to the demonic path. But Yan Imo is a demonic cultivator and he's used in this matter. Unlike Xian Xiaoyu, who has no restraint being so new to it all. So that's why. It's all Yan Mo's fault." Shut it. Seeing Danner sobbing, Zhuofan glared at her. The righteous path means to be above everything, to be an ascetic. One shouldn't fall prey to the demonic nature so easily. Yet desire has taken hold of his heart, and it was just a matter of time before he fell. Yen Imo was only a trigger. It was his twisted heart who was tested in the end, and it was found lacking. Now whose fault was it? Danner's heart shook and closed her eyes in silence. Zhuofan frowned and sighed. How are the girls? And how did you get out? Sister Qingqing seemed to have seen this coming and was prepared. She held a poison pill in her mouth. The moment they force her, she would take it. She said she had an agreement with you 6 months later. If you weren't there after this time, she would do what the sect leader asked. If you arrived and gave her an answer, she would be able to rest in peace. And she's also protecting the others. Danner sobbed. Then we had our cultivation sealed, but we could still move. Sister Qingqing seemed prepared since one day she took us to the permafrost cave. There was senior sister Han Shenying in a wall there, and she broke through it to unseal our cultivation. We killed our way out afterward, but the elders blocked us. Only I managed to escape while the others got caught. What, Shenying? Kui Lang cried out. Danner looked at him and nodded. Sect leader Shenying was the previous wielder of permafrost. She should have been one of the girls in the 4 elements cycle array, but after hearing of her sect rule violation 2 decades ago, for colluding with demonic cultivators, she was cast out. Why else would the sect throw away such a rare water constitution like hers? In the end, the sect leader had looked high and low for a replacement, thus coming with Sister Qingqing. Shenying, Kui Lang's eyebrow shook. How is she? Danner shook her head. I don't know. After I got away, they were caught. But I believe Sister Shenying knew what was going on, so that must be why Sister Qingqing was prepared. After all, Sister Qingqing had been in contact with Sister Shenying ever since she came to the sect and inherited permafrost. Closing his eyes, Kui Lang shook all over, gnashing his teeth and showing his deep worry. Pa! Zhuofan slammed his heavy hand on his shoulder. Kui Lang started and looked at Zhuofan's dark and scary face. Is Han Shenying your girl? Zhuofan squinted. Don't worry, Qingqing is smart. Since she can save one person, she can save many. In any case, without your girl, I would now probably be late to the rescue. I alone have no chance of getting 2 girls out. But now, since there's still time before the appointment, it's enough to send a team in and take down Mystical Heaven's sect. Kui Lang shuddered and looked at Zhuofan in amazement. Danner was also shaken up. Mystical Heaven's sect was one of the 9 sects in Western lands. While conflicts between them existed, an all-out war was out of the question, not when it would draw Double Dragon Manor's attention. No one was about to take such a blame. Yet Zhuofan, in a fit of anger, didn't care about these things. Even if the consequences would be dire, that would be then. If he did not do this, he would regret it for as long as he lived. Zhuofan was seeping with bloodthirst, shocking everyone around him. Danner was even more dazzled by his aura. This guy's insane, but also a mover and a shaker. Whoosh! 2 elderly in white flashed before the group, in the 4th layer of ethereal stage. It's Elder Li and Elder Chang. Danner cried out in fear. The elders showed mocking smiles. Seeing Kui Lang was the strongest at 2nd layer of ethereal stage, they thought they were easy pickings. Danner, you dumb girl, did you really think you could escape Mystical Heaven sect? Bam! One elder looked at her with contempt, yet he did not finish as the sky was filled with blood. Gone was his presence, as was his irritating voice. In his place was a huge scarlet dragon, Zhuofan's almighty Scarlet Dragon King. Its sharp claw clenched the tenderized flesh, spreading the bloody smell as it squirted what blood it had left. On that dragon was Zhuofan and his cold, dead eyes. In a singular strike he wiped a 4th layer ethereal stage expert off the face of this world, destroyed in body and soul. The other elder was close to having a mental breakdown. Dana was standing there in shock at Zhuo Fan's action. She knew Zhuo Fan was strong, but she didn't think he would let anger take him to the point he would not let the others even speak. It only showed how much Chu Qingqing's plight grated on his nerves. Heaven Dragon Soul, Almighty Scarlet Dragon King. The elder looked on in shock, shaking all over. Why, you're the one young master talked about. The freak at the Double Dragon Gathering, demon scheming sect's Zhuo Fan. Smirking, Zhuo Fan mocked, right in one guess, though I have no prize for you. Bam! With another loud noise, the almighty Scarlet Dragon King's other claw slammed down, crushing him before he even got a chance to wail. His guts and everything sprayed all over the place. Chapter 732, Charisma. Chapter 732, Charisma. Proofreader, Papatonks. Whoosh. With the two pursuing mystical heaven sect elders dealt with, Zhuo Fan took back his soul and used a sacred stone to set up an instant concealing array around the group. In a blink, all of them vanished from sight. You guys wait here and don't move. I'm going back to the sect for help. Zhuo Fan gave them a quick look then left. Kui Lang suddenly said, Steward Zhuo, sect leader will never agree to go to war with mystical heaven sect. It's of no consequence. I will bring our people. Squinting, his eyes flashed. Zhuo Fan's heart had a plan in motion as he flew for the demon scheming sect. Kui Lang, I'll leave the girls in your care. Don't worry, Steward Zhuo, I will do my duty. Kui Lang cupped his hands, sighing inside. Steward Zhuo, please find a way to get Miss Chu and my girl. It's all up to you now. Whoosh. Half a month later, Zhuo Fan was back in demon scheming sect. With a sign, the space warped to show an entrance. Halt. Who goes there? One disciple popped before Zhuo Fan, but upon recognition, he jerked back and apologized. Steward Zhuo is back. Forgive my rudeness. It's fine. Zhuo Fan waved him off. The disciple scratched his head. Thank you, Steward Zhuo. That brat kept saying Steward Zhuo has left the sect and won't be coming back. It made me so sad these past 2 weeks. Aren't you back now? Ha ha ha. You really missed me. Zhuo Fan raised an eyebrow. The disciple instantly nodded. Of course, it's all thanks to Steward Zhuo that we, laborers, no longer live as cattle. You brought us hope for tomorrow. Although now it's different and I don't have the strength to enter Steward Zhuo's elite labor office, at the very least I have a future now. I will definitely join next year, ha ha ha. Good for you. Zhuo Fan patted his shoulder with a smile. How many others share your thoughts? Startled, the disciple was still honest. Steward Zhuo, all of the labor office is immensely grateful for all that you've done for us. All those inner and outer disciples that entered elite labor have gained a lot from it. I believe that most disciples and elders hold Steward Zhuo in favor for doing so much for the sect. There's still some left. They're likely inner sect elders trustees. They must be hating your guts, ha ha ha. The two burst out laughing. Zhuo Fan nodded and turned serious. Then, how many of you are willing to help me with something? Steward Zhuo, you need but say it and we'll brave any dangers. The guy cupped his hands. Good. Is sect leader around? Zhuo Fan nodded and plotted as he walked for the inner sect. Ha ha ha, Steward Zhuo, this is because of your feats. The guy sighed. Sect leader has been very busy lately and has no time to stay at the sect. Ever since you shone at the Double Dragon Gathering, many empires want to throw their lot with us. They even want us to move in with them, something only the superior 3 sects can do. Sect leader has been so happy these days, always moving from one empire to another for talks. Zhuo Fan shook and turned his head back with a devious smile. So sect leader isn't home? That is the case. The disciple gave a numb nod. Grinning wider, Zhuo Fan laughed. Perfect, this makes it easier. Zhuo Fan strutted forward for the inner gate, leaving the disciple scratching his head. Steward Zhua is acting strange. Dang! A bell toll was heard throughout the sect. All elders and venerables jerked at the sound, rushing for the main hall. For God's sake, who the hell is the fool to mess with the bell and call for a meeting? The Double Dragon gathering is over and it's only been 2 days since last time. What's so important this time? One elder grumbled as he dragged himself over to the hall. A venerable came to him and mocked, "Are you stupid? The sect leader isn't around. Only the High Venerable has the right to toll. But he has always been a simple man and never used the bell. Though there is one with the nerve to do it. Venerable sure." The elder's mouth twitched, their inner faction had been losing all the time. "We, from the elite labor, are twice as many as them. Yet he still has the never to make a fuss. Is he after a power play now that sect leader isn't here?" The venerable shrugged, "Who knows? Ha ha ha, one thing's for sure, he doesn't have the strength." All oldies were going towards the main hall filled with doubt. Venerable Shi frowned in his home. Next to him was his prized disciple, Lu Xia. "Lu Xia, did you make contact with him?" Venerable Shi muttered. Lu Xia spoke in earnest, "Master, they have all agreed and await something to happen here." "What can happen when they all run off?" Venerable Shi mocked, "It looks like there are still people out there unconcerned by fame and fortune, shirking off their merits. Zhua Fan, that's mighty noble of you, leaving after your big win. Do you not care about your career? Or is it that you sensed the danger around you and made the logical choice?" Venerable Shi's eyes shone as he sighed. He had been waiting for the moment to act for so long it made him depressed. Lu Xia was also helpless. Zhua Fan has always been unexpected and unpredictable. Dang! The clear sound of a bell echoed out in the courtyard. Venerable Shi raised an eyebrow and looked at the inner sect with a frown, "That twerp Xia Wuyue isn't home, so who'd dare toll the main hall's bell instead of me?" Venerable Shi's eyes shone. "Maybe this is the chance we've all been waiting for." The two rushed over. In the main hall there was now a sea of people. All elders and venerables had gathered, all looking stumped at the man in center. He tolled the bell. "Elders and venerables of demon scheming sect, have all of you come?" Zhua Fan looked at them with a cold eye. "Ugh!" They all started, with Venerable Bai looking at Zhua Fan curiously. "Steward Zhua, what is this?" "Only the sect leader and High Venerable can toll the inner sect bell. Though they had been some using it without permission in the past, you're still a disciple. If you need us to do something, you could have just asked and not made a scene." "He, Venerable Bai, who are you talking about here?" One elder of Venerable Shi's faction barked, "High Venerable hardly interferes in sect matters and goes where he wants. For Venerable Shi to come forward is only natural. What's wrong in him tolling the bell? Isn't it above his status still? What's hard to understand, he schemes for power." Venerable Bai mocked. The other elder was enraged. Zhua Fan held out a bright badge, with Xie written on it. "Is this authority enough? Sect leader's badge?" The oldies shook and bowed, "Greetings, sect leader." Zhua Fan was akin to Xie Wuyue holding that badge. Since Xie Wuyue wasn't home, it left Zhua Fan room to weasel in. Elders and venerables of the demon scheming sect must obey sect leader's orders. They all bowed and none dared refute him. Zhua Fan shouted, "Demon scheming sect's elders and venerables will now listen to my commands, or they will be punished by sect rules." "Yes, sir." The crowd bowed again. "The entire sect is to come with me to Mystical Heaven sect." "What?" They all looked at him in shock. He wanted everyone to go to Mystical Heaven sect? What for? That would leave their sect empty and would cause God knew what by going into another sect's turf. Everyone was hesitating. Is this sect leader's true intention? Even Venerable Qi and Bai, people on Zhua Fan's side, were looking lost. Only one person looked joyfully at Zhua Fan on the highest chair, Venerable Shi. He, Zhua Fan, you're back at last. The bigger the noise you make, the better. Allow this old man to lend you a hand as well." Venerable Sher grinned like a winner. Chapter 733, All the King's Men. Chapter 733, All the King's Men. Proofreader, Papatonks. What's going on here? Who tolled the bell? Acting like he just showed up, Venerable Sher looked tense as he walked in front. Seeing his elders were also here, one came before him and pointed at Zhuofan. "Venerable Sher, Zhuofan holds the sect leader badge and rang the bell, convening this meeting. Now he wants everyone in the sect to march for Mystical Heaven sect." What? Venerable Sher looked deeply at Zhuofan, then at the badge. Zhuofan gave him a cold look. He knew that Venerable Sher was the boss of the inner sect. Even though Xia Weiyue was the sect leader, he was still being contradicted in cases, which made it even harder just by having his badge. In this case, if he was blocked, he would just have to set Venerable Sher as an example for the rest of them. Zhuofan's eyes flashed with bloodthirst while the oldies looked at his defiant gaze with mockery. "You're just a mere disciple with a bit of merit to your name. Even if you're sect leader's right hand, not even sect leader himself would be able to do what he wanted if Venerable Sher was against it. Wanting to use some piece of wood to cower us? You don't know the power of the inner sect by the looks of it." Venerable Qi and the others from the labor office watched while calculating gains and losses. If Zhuofan was going against Venerable Sher, they would side with him. Although Zhuofan's order was casual, it had deep implications and should be treated with care. But he had sect leader's badge and was also labor office's representative. Be it in a vie for power in an empire or the clashes between sects, it always came down to following the one that adhered to their goals. Zhuofan was the rock of the labor office. So no matter how ridiculous his request was, they would back him up. This was a fight for interests. The hall was split in two groups on the spot, glaring at each other as they were on the brink of war, plunging the sect into a bitter fight. However, Venerable Sher's action left everyone shocked. Both factions stared at him in stupefaction. Bowing before Zhua, the badge, Venerable Sher spoke with utmost respect. "Greetings, sect leader, I obey your order." Venerable Sher, his faction looked at him lost, the same for labor office's side. What's with Venerable Sher all of a sudden? Why did he cave so soon when he always fought tooth and nail with sect leader? Is Zhuofan's aura so grand that it shook him? Everyone's mind was thrown for a loop at the sudden development. Glaring at them, Venerable Sher spoke earnestly, "Impudent. Zhuofan carries sect leader's badge, which makes him the highest power beneath sect leader. His words are sect leader's. How dare you defy his orders? We won't." They all hung their head. Zhuofan and Venerable Qi's side were filled with doubt. Did he wake up on the wrong side of the bed this morning? Ignoring their puzzled gazes, Venerable Sher smiled. "Ha ha ha, since this is sect leader's will, we can only follow it. Only, we can't leave the sect empty. May I leave a few inner sect elders and disciple to defend it, Steward Zhua?" Eyeing him, Zhuofan nodded. He didn't want to take them in the first place, only labor office's elders, or if they came as well, it might spell trouble at the worst moment. Though Venerable Sher's attitude was very peculiar, queer in fact. Why is he helping me for a change? Frowning, Zhuofan looked dead in the weasel's eyes, pondering and finally letting it go. Time was no longer a luxury right now. "All right. We'll do as Venerable Sher said. The inner sect elders and venerables shall stay behind while labor offices will follow me." Zhuofan nodded and boomed. Everyone nodded and bowed in response. Venerable Qi's team had their doubts, but now, to support Zhuofan, they kept silent. Venerable Sher stroked his beard, his eyes glinting. "Getting rid of him alone isn't enough. We must remove the elite labor office down to the root as well. Or they would just rise again and we'll regret it. Now that he's asking for it, we should further his manic plans and let him destroy himself." The others frowned, with only Grand Elder able to see the wisdom in it and shaking his head. The kid has done it this time. Demon scheming sect's disciples had their orders and soon gathered. Kuei Gang and Yue were obviously there, since they were the closest to Zhuofan. Soon there were tens of thousands of disciples at the ready. Zhuofan looked around before setting off with all of them. The entire demon scheming sect was now empty and eerily silent, with only 100 elders holding down the fort. 2 weeks later, Kuei Gang and the girls were tense, waiting for news from Zhuofan. Seeing how another month passed, the four were tense about Chu Qingcheng and the others' fate, as well as if Zhuofan would be able to bring any help. Rumble. The sky darkened and thunder rolled. The black clouds loomed overhead, reflecting the downcast mood they felt inside. It was so oppressive it was hard to breathe. Looking above, those were not clouds but a sea of people that came right for them. The one leading them was none other than Zhuofan. Kui Lang cried out, "Heavens above, Steward Zhuo got the entire sect to come? Why are there so many people here to get our girls? How high could Zhuofan even be in the demon scheming sect? Your sect leader is willing to fight Mystical Heaven's sect all because he asked?" Demon scheming sect looked stunned. The other two girls were excited. Across all Western lands, only one man had such a charisma to get so many people to move, Zhuofan. Not that others lacked the power, but none were crazy enough to go to such lengths as attacking a sect for a girl. None but Zhuofan. Whoosh! Zhuofan led the descent. Kuei Lang's group rushed over with gratitude. "Steward Zhuo, your name is so widespread and heavy that sect leader gave you such force. I am in awe of being able to follow someone like you." Zhuofan, however, made a gesture for him to keep silent. "Keep it down. This isn't Xie Wu's doing. Luckily he was away and I could bring so many." Kuei Lang's scalp was numb. "Also, these guys don't know why I've brought them yet. So don't say anything and leave the explaining to me." Zhuofan grinned at the four. Yet they were all shell-shocked. Kuei Lang was even shaking all over. "Steward Zhuo, you didn't tell them anything and still brought them? When they find out we're going to save our girls, won't they turn on us?" Kuei Lang felt like crying. "I can even see my master over there." His master was against being with Han Qianying, and he was wondering just how pissed off he'd be once he found out he was here just to save her. Zhuofan patted his shoulder. "Do you want to save her?" "I do." "How much?" "With every fiber of my being." Kuei Lang spoke heavily. Zhuofan nodded and smiled. "Then leave it all to me." With a wise look in his eyes, Zhuofan turned to the elders and released his mighty aura. Seeing him so high and mighty, Kuei Lang finally realized that he was unlike any of them. They were still hesitating even if they wanted to do this, while Zhuofan was a man of action and determination. That was why he, as a mere disciple, led most of the demon scheming sect's elders and venerables. Chapter 734, Join Forces. Chapter 734, Join Forces. Proofreader, Papatonks. Cough. Clearing his throat, Zhuofan looked at the elders and venerables, his face hard and dead serious. "People, we'll stop here for now. I have to make you understand why we're going to Mystical Heaven's sect. Everyone get ready and prepare for action." They all frowned at how he spoke. They already found the fact he got all the experts from the sect strange, but Zhuofan's hard look seemed to show this matter had far more implications than he let on. They all looked at him, tension clear in their expressions. "We're going to Mystical Heaven's sect too." Zhuofan squinted and shouted, "Attack! To teach them a lesson." "What?" They cried out instantly at such a preposterous idea. Venerable Bai even refuted, "Steward Zhuo, that's going over the line. The 9 sect scuffles are minor, but to attack a sect like this without justification is criminal. The Double Dragon Manor will definitely intervene at some point and will punish us. None of us can take such blame. Not even sect leader." Zhuofan scratched his nose. "Justification? Did grabbing girls sounded better? Who the hell would risk their lives then? Steward Joa, is this really sect leader's intent? Venerable Chi looked at Kuei Lang and figured something out. If sect leader has no real reason, it's best we go back. It's not too late. If we go now, none of us can take on such a heavy responsibility for what may come. Venerable Chi looked long at Zhua Fan as he advised. He was reminding Steward Zhua. A mere girl ain't worth going crazy over. We can still turn back. Let's pretend that nothing happened before we lose more than we can afford. Venerable Chi didn't expose Zhua Fan's intent, as a huge gesture of respect, but would Zhua Fan balk so easily? Zhua Fan huffed and glared at them all. Do you know why I never stated the reason back in the sect? It's because I feared Venerable Shi's lies would block the attack on Mystical Heaven sect. Why? Because if they lost this battle, they would lose everything. We, however, aren't afraid, because we came from nothing and everything will be earned after. It's never in the now. They all shook and looked on with serious faces. The laborers were even echoing him. Many things had happened in the Double Dragon gathering, but I did not let the three venerables speak of them, out of fear that you would be impulsive. With a drawn-out sigh, Zhua Fan continued with a crestfallen tone, actually, our achievements could have been higher. But because of Mystical Heaven sect schemes, we suffered in singles, losing our chance to be a superior 3 sect. That really happened? The oldies whispered among each other in anger. Zhua Fan-eyed Fiend Yang, shouting, Venerable Fiend Yang, isn't that so? Why yes, startled, Fiend Yang bobbed his head. Though Zhua Fan had deliberated with the team on this matter before, to report only the good news for a greater achievement. Yet Zhua Fan had now used it as an excuse to get Chu Qingcheng. He was going to do anything to instill hatred into these people and save his girl. Fiend Yang had no clue about this, so he just agreed. With a dark look, Zhua Fan gnashed his teeth. Sect leader was enraged when he heard the dire consequences. Mystical Heaven's sect is a lower 3 sect like we used to be. Now that we're about to be a real middle 3 sect, are we about to stand their humiliation? That's why sect leader sent me a month earlier to return the favor, to show off our sect's power. Having seen Steward Zhua's light, they now knew he didn't leave for the secular world as it was said, but because of sect leader's order. But just as I got to Mystical Heaven's sect, something grave happened. Zhua Fan's tone shifted. They want to combine with Heaven Trailing sect. This will raise them above the middle 3 sects' power just so they would suppress us from the shadows. Hearing this news, I rushed to report to sect leader. In this time, there were even 2 elders who came to silence me, but of course I killed them instead. What? The oldies exploded in rage. Mystical Heaven's sect was too damn presumptuous. Leaving Double Dragon gathering schemes behind, sending elders to kill our greatest contributor must be punished. Do they think demon scheming sect can be messed with? Seeing their anger, Zhua Fan grinned on the inside. Sect leader was also furious hearing of this and wanted to deal with them personally. But you all know sect leader is holding talks with all kinds of empires. If we get pushed back because of 2 sects, it will affect our name. That's why sect leader had me make the first move. Since we can't win Heaven Trailing sect, that doesn't mean we can't touch its little bro. So sect leader gave me his badge, leaving me in charge. Even if Double Dragon Manor would punish us, we have to fight for our name. We are a middle 3 sect now, not something a lower 3 sect can mess with. This fight will establish us among the middle 3 sections. As long as Mystical Heaven's sect isn't destroyed, what's so grave about some punishment? I would even return the 2,000 sacred stones if I had to, just to preserve our name in the Western lands. Steward Zhua is truly honorable. If you do it, how can't we? Let's mess em up. The crowd cheered with a roar, ready to go kill their way into Mystical Heaven's sect. Kuei Lang had a dumb look on his face. Steward Zhua's wild boasting had the sect's elders thirsting for battle. Now even if sect leader shows up, they won't stop either. Just how did these shrewd old guys end up taken in by Zhuo Fan's words so easily? That was because Zhuo Fan had preyed on their minds. To get someone to give their life for you, benefits were a must, pillaging mystical heaven sect. On the other hand, there was also a need for a reason. Sect leader's order was the perfect excuse, while also making him the scapegoat. Zhuo Fan even said he would return his sacred stones if he had to. It showed he'd take the blame as well. And finally, focusing their anger on a common enemy, getting everyone roaring to go. Everything went as Zhuo Fan wanted it to. He got every oldie on board, even if they had some doubts. Because Zhuo Fan had smoothened over their worries already. Now all they had to do was follow Zhuo Fan into battle and get those girls back. Who? Zhuo Fan eased a breath and sported a strange grin. Danner was stumped. This big talker actually got this motley crew to save someone. Even I would have believed him if I didn't know something about this, ha ha ha. Venerable Chief shook his head. Fiend Yang's brow shook. Wasn't that badge used to be the leader in the Double Dragon Gathering? How did it become Wuyue's proof to attack Mystical Heaven sect? Fiend Yang was perplexed. The disciples who went to Double Dragon Gathering were also aware of the gaps in that glorious speech. But they were on Zhuo Fan's side. The previously puzzled demon scheming sect's crowd was now united under a single thought: to kill. All that was left was to get to Mystical Heaven sect. Seeing as he could not stop Zhuo Fan, Venerable Qi proposed a valid point. Steward Zhuo, Mystical Heaven sect is mostly the same size as us, but we are now going without everyone and are about to attack their home ground. It'll be hard to beat them behind their array. The people stopped being noisy and frowned. True. Zhuo Fan's brow shook and grinned. He turned around to look at a black cloud coming over, led by a familiar figure. Brother Zhuo, we've come to help. Who? The demon scheming sect's people looked up to see the sky covered by a throng of men as they flew over. In the lead was a man in his 20s, filled with vigor and regal. Zhuo Fan's features softened as he smiled. You've grown, Yunhai. Brothers have come to answer the call. Zhuo Fan's eyes flashed and laughed. Ha ha ha, now we have enough men. My two armies will join forces and win. You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.